one after hitting the reset button on life to stop his childhood friend from going. Full-blown Yandere again, he bobbied her and held her in the palm of his hand like his own flesh and blood sister. By day, he lectured her on the core values of a civilized society. By night, he educated her on the cautionary legal tales of the infamous outlaw John Doe, just when he was feeling incredibly smug that his childhood friend would not turn into a psycho-obsessive Yandere this time around. He rummaged through her room and unearthed an aquarium diary, a densely packed stalker log. It was densely filled with every single excruciating detail about him, the date of their first meeting when they first held hands, even the exact date of his first nocturnal awakening, just as he was reading this and sweating buckets, his childhood friend stealthily hugged his neck from behind. "Brother," she whispers, "your clothes smell like men's cologne today." Cut to him at the tender age of 8, sitting on the sofa in his own house, sighing like a retired old man. From outside the door across the hall came the pitiful, kitten-like crying of a child. The girl across the hall, Lyra, was being beaten. For the 5th time in just 2 days. Yes, you guessed it, he had been reborn. And reborn right back to being an 8-year-old. At this moment, he glanced at the door opposite theirs, looking dead serious at his mom, Evelyn, who had just walked out of the kitchen. He suggests they pack up and move because he feels like their house's aura is pretty cursed. Before his words can even land, his mom reaches out and smacks the back of his head, telling the little brat to knock it off. She complains that the only thing in his eyes is that cartoon sheep on TV. What cursed aura, it is all nonsense. Has he even finished his summer homework yet? Saying that, she cannot help but glance toward the front door. Lowering her voice, she mutters that it is a sin to beat such a cute little girl every single day. Meanwhile, he grumbles internally, "Sin, forget about the sin. And cute little girl, when this girl grows up, she is literally going to claim her son's life." Lyra's family situation is an absolute train wreck. A dad who drank like a fish, a mom who ran for the hills, and the daughter who was left behind. Ever since he can remember, the little sister across the hall was always crying. Her clothes were always covered in dirt. Because of this, she was frequently ostracized and isolated at school. The other kids mocked her, saying her mommy did not want her anymore, that she was an unwanted stray. At that time, although he was Lyra's neighbor, he had never bullied her, but at school, he definitely never took the initiative to approach her. Either thinking of this, he cannot help but let out a heavy sigh, given all that. How on earth did Lyra end up falling for him later in life, and even when as far as kidnapping him, while he is still deep in his philosophical thoughts? His mom yells at him to go buy soy sauce. He takes the opportunity to use his pocket money to secretly buy a fluffy cotton candy, just as he reaches the bottom of the stairs and is about to take a giant bite out of his sugary cloud. He sees Lyra. The beautiful little girl's face is covered in purple and blue bruises. Her eyes are swollen shut. The corner of her mouth is cracked and bleeding. Even though she is wearing long sleeves in the dead of summer, you can still see the skin peeking out is riddled with scars. The moment he saw her, his entire body went into a primal state of pure panic. Cold sweat instantly broke out across his back. After all, in his past life, he was drugged by this girl, survived a hellish day and night, and then died right there. Who wouldn't be absolutely terrified after that? And as if sensing his petrified gaze, she suddenly turned with a blank, completely expressionless face, locking eyes that were already brimming with deep coldness and hatred. The sheer terror of being pinned down by her in his past life was bubbling up. With his brain completely short-circuiting, he slowly extended his trembling hand. He asked if she wanted a bite, offering a massive cloud of pink cotton candy. He held it right in front of the little girl. She froze. Soon that icy hatred melted into pure bewilderment and confusion. Finally, a bizarrely sweet smile bloomed across the little girl's face. She slowly reached out with a hand covered in old scars. Trembling slightly, she took the treat from his hand, whispering her thanks. Seeing her eagerly take a bite, he let out a massive sigh of relief. He quickly sidestepped her, wanting to sprint upstairs as fast as possible. But seconds later, he heard a very light set of footsteps trailing right behind him. He turned his head and immediately locked eyes with her once again. Seeing him stop, Lyra offered the pink cotton candy back to him. In a tiny voice, she asked if he wanted to eat, since she only took a little. She told him he could eat from the other side, insisting it was completely clean. The way she spoke so softly looked incredibly pitiful and endearing. He stared blankly at the soft, adorable little girl standing before him. Honestly, who could have guessed this adorable kid would grow up to be so crazy? But just as he opened his mouth to refuse, loud footsteps echoed. His mom was coming downstairs to search for her young son. She immediately spotted Lyra, reaching out to hand over the pink cotton candy. In an instant, she also noticed the horrific bruises covering Lyra. A wave of unbearable pity immediately flashed across his mother's face. She reached out and smacked his head, asking if he wanted to die. How could he take his little sister's candy? Instantly, Lyra shrank back. Seeing her shrink away, the boy quickly yelled out to warn her. But it was too late, and she tumbled backward down the steps. She rolled down the staircase as his mother let out a shriek and rushed down. She desperately checked if she was okay, thanking God the stairs were short. Still, for such a tiny child to fall like that, it definitely hurt a lot. Yet Lyra did not utter a single cry, only staring at the floor. She stared at her ruined cotton candy as tears welled up in her eyes. This incredibly pitiful sight absolutely shattered his mother's heart. She quickly scooped the tiny girl up, promising to take her to a doctor. But Lyra shivered violently in her arms, looking absolutely terrified to her core. She cried that they had no money and her dad would beat her. His mother fell silent for a moment, then spoke with utmost gentleness. She reassured the girl, saying they had a doctor right at home. Honestly, in his previous life, living to the ripe age of 26, he had never seen his mother look this gentle. Then, peering over her shoulder, Kalin saw Lyra staring directly at him, so he pulled a goofy face, stop looking at him. That creepy stare was giving him chills. After going inside, he immediately pointed at Lyra, who was now sitting on their sofa, trying to defend his honor. He bought that cotton candy for her, and he did not even get a single bite. Hearing this, Lyra immediately stood up, her tiny body trembling as she whispered an apology, stuttering that she was sorry and would never dare eat it again. Kalin's mom quickly cooed in her softest voice, "Don't be scared, Lyra. Auntie is not scolding anyone. If Big Brother gave it to her, then she should eat it. It was perfectly fine." At this moment, Kalin's feelings were an absolute tangled mess. Had he not promised himself that he would stay far away from her? How did he end up bringing this future little psycho right into his living room? He watched his mom, her face full of heartache, apply medicine to Lyra's wounds. Suddenly, he remembered that in his past life, his mom had actually tested the waters and asked if she should bring the little girl from across the hall over to play with him, but back then Kalin had replied with pure disgust, saying he did not want to play with her. Nobody at school liked her anyway, and his classmates would stop talking to him. Now, thinking back to his childhood self and looking at Lyra, covered in bruises, trembling as the medicine was applied, yet not making a single sound of pain, he realized that his past self was kind of a jerk. Originally, he had always thought there was no bad blood between him and Lyra. But thinking about it now, the cold bystander who shattered her last sliver of hope was probably him. No wonder when he was tied to that bed, he heard her standing beside him, whispering in genuine confusion, asking why she could not be his sister. She envied him so much, so why not be his wife instead, so they could finally be a family? Thinking of this, he let out a heavy sigh, turned around, dug out all his top-secret hidden snacks and brought them over. Tearing open the packaging, he handed them to Lyra, telling her to eat some first. His mom would have dinner ready soon. Her cooking was top tier, but Lyra did not dare take them. By pure reflex, she darted a cautious look at his mom. That hyper-careful, frightened demeanor would break anyone's heart. Kalin's mom shot him a glare, then took the snacks from his hands and gently placed them into Lyra's, telling her to eat. It was completely fine. Then she locked her sights on him, calling him over. Kalin hung his head in defeat, trailing behind his mom like a dead man. Walking, he felt a spanking coming on, hoping it would not be the rear this time. He was 26 years old mentally, for heaven's sake. Surprisingly, his mom just pulled him into the bedroom, asking in a hushed voice if he liked the little sister. Kalin blanked out for a second, remembering how his past self had rejected her without a second thought. If in this life he did not reject her, maybe she would not turn into a total psycho later on. If she stayed normal, he would not have to die prematurely. Plus, being 26 on the inside, watching a little girl get beaten senseless every day did not sit right with his conscience, so he silently nodded his head. His mom breathed a sigh of relief, probably not expecting him to be this mature and understanding. As a reward, she blessed him with $10, then went to take Lyra back home. to grab some clothes, but Lyra thought she was being kicked out, her face turning pale. The look she gave him as he stood in the bedroom doorway was incredibly complex. Seeing her keep staring at him, his mom assumed Lyra was just attached to him. She simply reached out and dragged him along, telling Lyra not to fear her brother. An auntie will go with you to get your clothes. Your dad just left, so he probably won't be back anytime soon. How about you eat and sleep at auntie's house tonight? Hearing this, Lyra's eyes lit up like fireworks. She reached out her tiny hand and carefully tugged at the hem of his shirt. In a soft yet intensely serious voice, she whispered that her hands were not dirty. He looked down at her and sighed, agreeing to go. The moment they opened the door, foul stench assaulted their noses. In the living room, the sofa was completely lopsided. The table was smashed. The TV on the stand was covered in cracks, and there were literal blood stains on the floor. He instantly thought of the bruises on Lyra's face. At this moment, the tiny hand clutching his shirt gripped it a little tighter. He thought she was terrified, turning his head, ready to offer some comforting words, but instead he caught sight of her cold, emotionless expression. Her gaze fell upon the blood stain, seemingly carrying a hint of mockery. That expression was so wildly out of place for someone her tender age. It sent a violent chill straight through his heart. Holy macaroni, is she already in her Yandere phase? If so, did he just invite a wolf into the house? What if she harms his parents? Then he watched as his mom held Lyra's hand, leading her to the balcony to pack. She didn't even have a bedroom. Whenever her dad was home, she was forced to sleep on the balcony, and honestly, calling it packing was a stretch. There was basically nothing to pack. Her clothes hadn't fit her in ages. They were all outfits her mom bought for her when she was 5. After her mom died, no one ever bought her anything again. His mom was practically dying of heartbreak. Before, she thought Lyra always wore long sleeves just to hide her scars. The truth was she couldn't fit into her short sleeves anymore. His mom looked at Lyra with pure sorrow, promising to buy her brand new clothes, letting her stay with them until her father comes back. Saying this, his mom paused. Lyra, ever the perceptive one, said sensibly, "She will come back then," promising Auntie Evelyn she won't let him find out. His dad, Arthur, is a doctor. After coming home from his shift, he treated Lyra's wounds. The poor kid's back was practically beaten to a pulp. Thank God there was no major damage to her bones. While being treated, Lyra even had the nerve to comfort his mom, telling her she knows to curl up into a ball so that way the father won't strike her head or bones. Hearing this coming from an 8-year-old, even though he was slightly terrified of her, he couldn't help but feel a massive pang of pity, let alone his mom, whose heart was already bleeding for her. That night at dinner, all his chicken drumsticks magically migrated to Lyra's bowl, but Lyra, being the sensible angel she was, acting as, transferred a drumstick right back to his bowl, insisting her brother eat. His feelings were an absolute tangled web, sympathy mixed with straight-up fear. But all those complex emotions shattered into a million pieces when his mom announced that Lyra would be sleeping with him. He stared at Lyra, who was standing next to his mom. He protests that men and women shouldn't share a bed after 7. They are already 8. He protests, but she says it is just for one night. We don't have a spare room. Tomorrow, your dad and I will go buy a bunk bed and let your little sister have some space. His mom clearly knew her request was a bit unreasonable. He glared with eyes wide open and decisively declared, "Then I am sleeping with Dad. You two can sleep together." But the moment those words leave his mouth, panic sets in. What if Lyra decides to hurt his mom in her sleep? Even though she looks tiny and weak right now, he can't take that risk. Absolutely not. Just as his mom is about to agree, he blurts out, "Never mind, let her sleep with me. Lyra, get over here." Lyra obediently shuffles over. Looking up at him, she says, "Brother, I don't move around when I sleep." Honestly, he is so annoyed. "Sleep, sleep, sleep, Mom, you go back to bed too," he sighs. Seeing his grumpy attitude, Mom looks a bit worried. She lectures them to get along and not fight, then finally leaves the room. In the end, Lyra and he lay on opposite edges of the bed. The no man's land between them is wider than the Grand Canyon. No sleeping. He fully plans to pull an all-nighter, absolutely terrified that if he falls asleep, he will get assassinated in his dreams. The person next to him carefully tries to roll over. He immediately rolls the opposite way, tumbling straight onto the floor with a thud. Lyra is stunned for a second. With a hint of panic, she asks, "Brother, are you okay?" He glares at her like a hawk. "What were you trying to do just now?" My back is hurting and Itchy, I just wanted to turn over. I won't move anymore. She looks at him, biting her lip and nervously glances at the bedroom door, lowering her voice. She offers, I can sleep on the floor. When I was at home, I slept on the balcony floor anyway. Brother, let me sleep on the floor. He stares at the little girl in front of him. Lyra is undeniably pretty, looking back apart. The reason she was bullied was probably because she was almost too pretty. Even with her face currently painted with bruises, she is still beautiful. Inevitably, his mind drifts to her back and the scars littering her body, all whipped into her by her dad using a leather belt, old scars layered over new ones, some of the newer wounds, probably due to the scorching weather and lack of treatment, are starting to fester. He keeps trying to brainwash himself that she and the psycho from his past life are two entirely different people. In the end, he can't even convince himself. A heavy sigh escapes his lips. In a defeated, muffled voice, he says, you sleep there. I will sleep on the floor, otherwise my mom will whip me tomorrow. But Lyra vigorously shakes her head. No, you can't. If Auntie sees, she'll think I'm a bad person. Moment he thinks about how she has been walking on eggshells ever since she stepped into their house, he ultimately sighs again, climbing back onto the bed. He pats the empty space next to him. We sleep together if you don't want to sleep with me, but she just stares at him with those massive doe eyes. Before he can finish his sentence, he cuts himself off. Hurry up and get in, I am sleepy. Finally, the little girl carefully climbs under the covers. She curls up into a tiny ball in a minuscule corner of the bed. He decides to just ignore her existence, flipping over and presenting his back to her. Originally, he swore he expected not to sleep a wink, but within 10 minutes, his body had sprawled out into a giant starfish shape, snoring away in dreamland. On the flip side, Lyra's eyes remained wide open. She didn't dare move a single muscle. It wasn't until she heard the steady, rhythmic sound of his breathing that she, cautiously, oh so carefully, shifted her body and slowly inched closer to him. The emotions swirling in her eyes were complicated, looking at his fast asleep face. She currently had zero expression. Lyra thought he was acting super weird. Today, usually when he saw her, he'd turn and walk the other way. He'd never willingly approach her. Yet today, he actually offered her cotton candy and even brought her home. She slowly turned her head, scanning the room. She really liked it here. Normally, when she was being beaten, she would huddle by her door and listen to the chaotic symphony of his household across the hall. Auntie Evelyn yelling at him, his talking back, the loud TV playing in the background. But Auntie's yelling sounded completely different from the violent screaming in her own house. Lyra always saw the chubby kid across the hall getting piggybacked home by his dad. Even though he was already so big, his mom would buy him watermelon in the summer and roasted sweet potatoes in the winter. She'd be scolding him the whole time, but she'd still buy him whatever he wanted. He also had tons of friends at school. Everyone loved him. Honestly, she liked him too. She remembered that when they were really little, he had shared candy with her and held her hand to go play in the snow. But later, after her mom left, everything changed. He and she, a filthy bug from the gutters, were suddenly living in two completely separate worlds. He was just so incredibly happy. So happy that just looking at him made her feel warm. She couldn't help but fantasize if only she could be a part of their family too. She had never, in her wildest dreams, imagined she'd actually be brought into their home. Thinking of this, Lyra looked at him and whispered into the dark, brother. She extended a tiny, scar-covered finger. She wanted to poke his chubby, pale cheek, but then, as if realizing how dirty she was, she pulled back. In the end, she only dared to gently poke his soft stomach through his shirt. That squishy texture finally brought out a hint of a genuinely playful, childlike smile on her face. Then, just as she was about to lie back down, he suddenly rolled over. His arms and legs flopped down, pinning Lyra entirely underneath him. At this age, he was a genuinely hefty little butterball. The weight of his limbs crushing her was no joke. Lyra could barely breathe. The wounds on her back screamed in pain from the pressure, but she absolutely refused to move, terrified that a single twitch would wake him up. Just as her face was turning beet red from holding her breath, the sleeping boy suddenly wrapped his arms around her tightly, squeezing her like a giant, comfortable bolster pillow. Lyra was stunned. The last time she had been held like this while sleeping was when her mom was still around. Slowly, she rested her little head against his chest. In her heart, she whispered, "Good night, brother." This felt a bit like the story her mom used to read to her, The Little Match Girl, even though this Warmth might be agonizingly temporary, she still wanted to soak up as much of it as possible. The next morning, he was violently jolted awake by his mom. Slapping his behind, his mom snaps, "Kane, do you have a death wish? You flattened your sister." Like a pancake, Kane snaps his eyes open with a gasp, only to see his mother gently cradling Lyra in her arms. He's still completely disoriented, having absolutely no clue what just happened. Then he hears Lyra earnestly explaining, "It is okay, Auntie. Evelyn, brother was probably just worried I would be cold," he lets out aloud. Confused, huh? But it is midsummer, pushing nearly 100 degrees out here. Every single day, then it clicks. Last night he seemed to have been hugging an incredibly comfortable body pillow. His face contorts in sheer horror. That pillow was not Lyra, was it? Standing at the door, his dad casually reminds to check Lyra's wounds and see if they have been rubbed raw. Great, now confirmed, the body pillow was indeed Lyra. He watches his mom lift Lyra's shirt to check her back, but not before shooting him a lethal glare. He constantly feels like ever since Lyra arrived, his status in this family has plummeted to absolute zero. Still, he leans over to take a peek. Thank goodness the wounds had not really been agitated. He breathes a sigh of relief, then, trying to sound tough, he scolds her, "Don't you know how to wake me up or push me away?" To his surprise, she just gives him a sickeningly sweet smile, but with "Brother, hugging me to sleep, I did not have any nightmares, thank you, brother." Hearing this, he completely freezes. Wait a minute, this little psycho is actually kind of legally adorable. When she was young, even a macho guy like him cannot resist this. Honestly, who would not want a sweet little sister like her? But how did she mutate into such a monster? The next day after breakfast, his mom and dad take Lyra out shopping. Meanwhile, Kane is left behind at the house of rest to catch up on his summer homework. When the three of them return at noon, Lyra is already dressed in brand new clothes, her hair neatly trimmed. She scurries over to him and shoves candy into his hand. Whispering softly, the cute little girl says, "Brother, I secretly saved this for you. Auntie Evelyn and the others do not know." After speaking, those massive shining doe eyes lock right onto him. He looks at the absolute hope and expectation in the little girl's eyes. Damn it, this tough guy's heart completely melts. He glances at his parents, who are in the bedroom debating how to assemble the new bunk bed. Taking the milky candy from her hand, he rips open the wrapper, popping it right into Lyra's mouth. He lets out a soft huff, muttering that kids love this stuff. Apparently, the crinkling of the wrapper is too loud. His mom whips her head around and glares at him. "Kane, are you sneaking candy again? Do you want your teeth to rot and fall out?" Saying that, she marches over menacingly, but Lyra instantly jumps in front of him, acting as a human shield, mumbling around the candy. She says, "Auntie Evelyn, it was not brother, it was me." His mom stops in her tracks, startled. Then she looks at him with an expression of pure shock. "My boy has grown up. He is giving up candy." He looks at his mom's shocked face, feeling incredibly exasperated. He just does not like candy anymore. He is not a toddler. Beside him, Lyra nods in the most adorable way possible. "Brother is very good. He did not eat it." Hearing this, he shoots a complex look at the excessively cute little future psycho. The following days follow the exact same pattern. The two of them sharing a room morphs into becoming bunk bed roommates. Meanwhile, his mom kept him locked inside to grind through his homework. During those quiet days alone together, Lyra basically did whatever he asked of her, absolutely no questions asked. Whenever his mom returned and checked his incomplete homework, he never had to scramble for an excuse. Lyra would instantly jump in front of him to defend him. Her opening line was always, "Auntie Evelyn, it is all my fault," every time she pulled this routine. His mom's heart melted completely. How could she possibly scold her? But honestly, he felt like even though Lyra was young, her level of calculated innocence was a bit too advanced. He was not entirely sure yet and needed to observe her more, but spending every waking moment together, he definitely did not have that intense trauma reaction to her like he did when first traveling back in time. She was too well behaved and honestly pretty cute. In the blink of an eye, the new school semester arrived. On day one, his dad was the one who escorted them, warning him over and over to protect Lyra since her wounds had only just healed. But Lyra spoke up with absolute seriousness. "Uncle Arthur, I will protect brother." To be perfectly honest, at first he thought she was just playing her usual good girl card. He had no idea she was being deadly serious. When fighting with other kids, she really was the type to grab a brick and aim straight for Head, honestly, kids can be brutal, but their new classroom had bigger drama waiting. They were in grade 3, class 1. Their elementary school kept classes together. From first grade all the way up, he noticed that Lyra, who usually loved clinging to him like glue, slowed her pace the moment they entered the school. Gates choosing to trail a fair distance behind him instead, he intentionally slowed his own pace, but she refused to catch up. He knew why. She was trying to keep her distance so he would not get dragged down by her reputation, and so they walked into the classroom one after the other. He had barely reached his seat when a voice dripping with disgust rang out nearby. "You cannot sit here, little beggars belong in the trash pile." Lyra's brand new backpack was violently shoved onto the floor by the girl standing opposite her. Lyra stood beside the seat next to his, keeping her head low. It was impossible to read her expression. He could not help but frown. Today, Lyra looked incredibly beautiful, wearing a brand new little dress his mother bought for her. Her hair was tied up perfectly neat. Her delicate, exquisite features made her look like a porcelain doll, yet they still called her a little beggar. Seeing this, absolute rage ignited in his chest. Lyra heard the mocking laughter of the other kids, staring at her backpack tossed onto the dirty floor. The new backpack was pink, with a cute cartoon sheep on it. When she first saw it in the store, she fell in love instantly, but then she saw the price tag, $56. It was astronomically expensive to her, so when she visited the supermarket with him, she only stole a few glances and forced herself to look away. But last night after dinner, Auntie Evelyn and he went out for a bit, returning with this exact backpack. She treated it as her most prized treasure, and now someone had just thrown it on the dirty floor, calling her filthy. Lyra's eyes turned red. A flash of pure ruthlessness flickered in her gaze. Suddenly, a pale, chubby hand reached down and picked the backpack up, dusting it off gently. He warned Bryony not to cross the line. The backpack was brand new, and throwing it on the floor made no sense on an empty seat. Bryony clearly never expected anyone to stand up for Lyra. Her eyes went wide as saucers, demanding to know what he meant by brand new. Where would she even get the money? She probably stole it. He had never paid attention to this before, but it turned out kids this age could be unfathomably malicious, opening their mouths to call a 7 or 8-year-old child a thief. He told her to zip it. His parents bought the dress and the backpack along with the shoes. If they had a problem, he positioned himself squarely in front of Lyra. He placed the backpack on the seat she wanted and softly told her to sit down since nobody was sitting there. The little girl shot him a timid glance, her eyes rimmed with red. His heart ached fiercely. How much trauma did this adorable girl have to endure to turn into the monster she became later? How many times had scenes like this played out since she was a baby? A sudden, booming voice ordered them to find their seats immediately. It was their homeroom teacher, Mr. Thunder, shouting sternly at the students. Everyone was terrified of him, and in an instant, the crowd scattered like frightened mice. Lyra glanced up at him, standing beside her. He was still planted firmly by her side, like a loyal knight. When she was really little, she had a knight too, her own mother's embrace. Her mother left, though, leaving her to fantasize about all the people who would come to protect her, but all the protectors in her imagination were completely faceless. Until today, they had no identity, but from this moment onward, they did. It was her brother's face. Sensing her gaze, he looked down, telling her to relax. After saying that, he returned to his own seat. Lyra pursed her lips and let out a tiny, secret smile. This was the first time anyone had ever protected her at school. The first day was mostly filled with introductory nonsense. Anyway, he spent the entire day fighting off a massive food coma, thankfully. Besides that little morning skirmish, the rest of the day was drama-free. Well, not entirely, because he defended Lyra. A faction of the class began soft boycotting him. There were also some kids, like Lyra's deskmate, who wanted to be friends with her now, but she just kept a frosty expression and ignored everyone. However, she was a completely different person around her brother, soft, squishy, and totally obedient. Whatever he said was law, which felt pretty good. Still, he couldn't help but advise her that she really needed to make some friends at school, since people actually wanted to connect with her. But she whispered that some of them had bullied her before. Lyra trailed behind him, her voice soft and sticky like mochi. Before he could even formulate a response, several boys materialized out of nowhere and violently shoved him from behind. He let out a sharp, painful yell as he crashed hard into the entrance of an alleyway. White-hot pain Flared in his knees and palms where he broke his fall. He definitely scraped off a good layer of skin. One of the boys stood there looking outrageously smug, sneering that this was what he got for hanging with Lyra. Kalin grits his teeth in pure frustration at these cruel little brats. He gets ready to stand up and fight back, but looking up his jaw drops, there is Lyra holding half a heavy brick she found from out of nowhere, with its jagged edge. She brutally drives it right into a bully's leg. Seeing this, Kalin scrambles off the concrete, panicking. He lunges forward to grab her in a bear hug, but the brick still connects. The boy screams out in pain and bursts into tears. The other two are completely frozen, too terrified to move. Lyra is tiny and cannot break free from Kalin's strong grip. So she pivots and, wait for it, hurls the brick with force. Boom. It smashes the second boy directly in his foot, making him scream. Kalin keeps his arms locked around the wild girl with an iron grip. He barks out, "Lyra, do you want to get expelled from school?" Hearing this, she stops. Kalin roars at the three crying brats. If you keep crying, he warns, he will report them for assault. Total silence. The terrified boys instantly choke back their tears. With the bully silenced, he turns to the girl still in his arms. He glares at her and says, "When I let go, do not move." Otherwise, he is telling his mother on her. She immediately grows docile. But the glare she shoots the boys still burns with intense rage. They dared to bully Kalin, and she will get revenge for him eventually. Terrified, the three crying boys finally scurry off in a hurry. Kalin blocks her path and asks coldly what she was planning to do. Lyra just whispers back, asking if they had bullied him. Kalin takes a deep breath, preparing to gently comfort her, but then he notices her hand is trembling violently. He quickly grabs her wrist, only to find a deep bloody gash sliced right across her palm, still oozing fresh blood. He gets upset, asking why she did not say a single word. Lyra flinches at his harsh tone and softly whispers an apology. Kalin grabs her by the wrist and pulls her along, still lecturing. He warns her never to throw bricks again, asking what if they got hurt. Or what if she got expelled, or if they called her father in. Lyra stays completely silent, simply staring down at his hand holding hers. Honestly, her hand does not even hurt, being pulled along like this. She actually feels incredibly happy. Seeing her silence, Kalin looks back. He demands to know if she actually heard him, and Lyra obediently nods. She promises she heard him, thinking she does not need bricks anyway. There are plenty of other weapons. After taking the bus back home, they are completely alone, so Kalin has to play nurse for her. He treats her wound, his tone turning very serious but gentle. He warns her to protect herself first, instead of being so impulsive. Today they were just shocked, but normally she would get hurt. But Lyra lifts her head, looking at him with absolute seriousness. She can endure being bullied, but she will never let anyone hurt him. Gripping his hand tightly with her uninjured one, she promised to stop the bullies. "Brother, I will protect you," she promised, leaving him completely stunned. Warmth flooded his heart, and he silently vowed to protect her too. That semester, the entire image of Lyra completely changed. Despite her cold attitude, she slowly made some friends. Right now, he sat slumped, thinking deeply. He thought back to everything he remembered about Lyra from his past life. The girl in his memories was quiet, unkempt, and radiated a gloomy aura. But her grades were incredible, and teachers usually favor top students. She really should not have been totally cast aside. It all traced back to when Vance showed up at her school during first grade. He arrived completely wasted and threw a massive drunken fit. After that, the school abandoned her, utterly terrified of crossing his path. Dealing with Vance, a total degenerate, was something they desperately wanted to avoid. Because of him, she never even got the chance to attend middle school. In the summer before 6th grade, she was rushed to the hospital covered in blood. That was when his mother ran over and pounded furiously on their door. Rumors said she was almost beaten to death right after being discharged. He vividly remembered the blind date years later, where they finally crossed paths again. The gorgeous Lyra who showed up completely captivated his heart from the start. She looked absolutely exquisite, possessing a striking, deeply cold beauty. Her sharp winged eyeliner gave her an incredibly intimidating, unapproachable look. Yet her doe eyes filled with pure warmth the moment she looked at him. As an innocent young guy with zero relationship experience, his heart instantly started doing backflips just looking at her beautiful face. It was over the moment she softly, gently called out his name. His memories of her were pretty hazy, but she was definitely a master conversationalist. She easily brought up childhood memories, instantly bridging the gap between them. She made him completely drop his guard, but then her face suddenly turned pale. She claimed her period had arrived early and that her place was nearby. She asked if it would be too much trouble for him to escort her home. He hesitated for barely a second, especially after seeing the text from his mom. He had read the chat logs with his mom and had absolutely no suspicions. Talk about a terrifying trap, she came fully prepared to lock him down. Right after chugging the spiked water, just before passing out, his phone buzzed. The text was from his mom, saying the real blind date was hit by a car. Good news, he finally knew he was being played. Bad news, it was too late. It was only when he woke up the next day that he realized his life was over. It seemed Lyra had been scammed by whoever sold her those terrible fake drugs. She sat silently on the edge of the bed, slowly reaching out to him. She caressed his face, suddenly smiling as she picked up a nearby fruit knife. She did not hesitate, now whenever he thinks back to that insane moment. He gets incredibly annoyed thinking about how they were found in his previous life. They were probably found completely naked and plastered all over the local evening news. It was deeply humiliating, and he wished she had at least dressed him first. Suddenly, Kane hears a soft thud. Something is placed gently on his desk. In a grumpy voice, Kane asks, "What are you doing?" Lyra's eyes widen. She places a red bean slushie down. "I bought this for you," she stammers. He notices she is covered in sweat. Her face is completely flushed red. The cold slushie is the school cafeteria's ultimate, highly coveted summer limited edition. You have to line up forever for it, plus it costs $3. Kane knows his mother only gives them $5 a week for allowance. It is already Thursday, his own pocket money completely dried up days ago. Yet Lyra somehow bought this for him. She gently nudges the slushie closer. In a soft voice, she whispers, "I was wrong, I shouldn't have." Disturbed your nap, Kane immediately feels like absolute garbage. He sighs softly. He pokes the straw through the lid and hands it back. "Drink," he says. Lyra freezes for a second, whispering, "This is meant for you." She won't buy it for herself. "Hurry before everyone stares," he urges her. He frowns, looking at her. Honestly, he really wants her to have it. Lyra stares at the straw at her lips, unsure of what to do. She shoots a cautious glance his way. He looks fierce, but she knows. He isn't actually mad at all. Lyra blinks and takes a cautious sip. Then, breaking into a beautiful smile, she says, "It is very good." Kane looks at the adorable, shy girl, feeling even more depressed. He asks if she wants more, pushing the slushie toward her again. But sadness flashes across her face. Flustered, she stammers out an apology. Is it because she drank from it? Does he think she is dirty? Keeping a completely deadpan expression, Kane pulls the slushie back, a huge slurp. In an annoyed tone, he grumbles, "Enough already. Sit down and behave." Seeing that he doesn't find her dirty at all for sharing a straw. Lyra's heart explodes with excitement, pure, raw excitement, far more than before. More than the dark times she dreamed of stabbing Vance. Kane is too good. If only he could treat her this well forever, she would match it. No one is allowed to bully Kane. Absolutely no one can steal him. School has been in session for 2 months. Kane feels something is off. On the bus home, he asks, "Has your dad ever been gone this long?" It has been almost 2 solid months, without a single trace of Vance. Just last night, his parents were whispering that the entire situation is weird. Lyra quietly replies, "I don't know, he disappeared for 3 months once." As she speaks, her hand subconsciously twists the straps of her backpack. Kane instantly feels a deep pang of regret for asking her so directly. To Lyra, Vance is a living nightmare. He gently covers her anxious hand. He stops her twisting, telling her that if Vance returns, he will hide her. Lyra freezes. Hide her? Wouldn't any normal person just ignore her? Everyone in the entire complex is absolutely, completely terrified of Vance. When the man goes crazy, he is capable of doing the most disgusting things. Lyra genuinely believes that Vance cannot even be classified as human anymore. To her, he is just a rabid animal, a dangerous beast. And everyone knows that wild animals belong locked up in a cage. The slaughterhouse, thinking of it makes her gaze turn icy, harboring a faint murderous intent, but the hand holding hers is so warm, and his gentle voice is warm too, he sighs, telling her they need to solve this from the root, but he has not figured out a foolproof plan yet. For now, they should just avoid him. She cannot afford to get hurt again, but the second they get home, they find out. Exactly why Vance has not returned. Standing right in front of Lyra's door is a woman, a very pretty woman. She looks at Lyra, calling her baby. But Lyra's face is completely devoid of emotion. Instinctively, she even shrinks back. Behind Kalin, he also instinctively raises an arm to shield her. The woman's face turns pale, flashing with embarrassment. Her gaze shifts to Kalin. You must be Kalin, right? Do you remember me? I am Lyra's mother, Auntie. Selena. Kalin thinks to himself, who the heck remembers you? But he still politely calls out Auntie Selena. Selena breathes a sigh of relief. She turns back to Lyra. Lyra, Mommy has something she wants to talk to you about. Just then, Kalin's mother, who had just finished work, comes up the stairs, carrying groceries. Lyra, Kalin, why are you guys standing in the hallway? Go inside. There is watermelon in the fridge. Suddenly, her voice abruptly stops. In a shocked tone, she gasps, Selena, you came back, eventually. All four of them end up inside the apartment. From start to finish, Lyra does not speak a single syllable to Selena. When Selena tries to reach out and hold her hand, Lyra dodges it completely. Selena is so mortified she looks like she does not know what to do with her hands and feet. Kalin's mother, on the other hand, just sighs. Kalin, take Lyra to your room to do homework. Take the watermelon with you. After going inside, Kalin intentionally leaves the door cracked open. He presses his ear against the wood, eavesdropping like a total pro, just as he is focusing all his energy on listening. A tiny, breathy voice sounds right next to his ear. Are you that desperate to hear what they are saying? Kalin violently flinches, screaming, holy macaroni. Internally, he nearly suffers a complete heart attack. He reaches out and pinches her soft, chubby cheeks, warning her not to scare him again. Lyra does not try to dodge, mumbling through her pinched cheeks, saying sorry. Kalin looks at those innocent doe eyes and feels his anger instantly deflate. He sighs, asking why she does not want to know what her mom is saying. What is the point of knowing? Lyra's tone is incredibly flat. She does not want me anyway. Over a year ago, after Selena left, she had not returned a single time. She knew exactly what kind of monster Vance was, and she also knew exactly what kind of torture Lyra might be subjected to. Yet she still hardened her heart and abandoned her daughter in that absolute hellhole. Now, watching her so casually say she does not want me anyway, Kalin cannot help but interject, how do you know if you do not try? Maybe she came back this time to take you away. But Lyra replies with utmost seriousness, brother, I went looking for her before. She found herself a very rich boyfriend, but when she saw me back then, she looked like she had seen a ghost. Probably did not expect me to still be breathing. That man saw me too. He looked a bit surprised because the kid was covered in bruises. And then she told that man, do not bother with this kind of trash. It is probably a scam. And then they dragged him away. Lyra told a simple story, but Kane squeezed his pencil until it nearly snapped. He wondered how utterly devastated she must have been. Back then, how much courage did a little girl need to search for her mother, only for harsh reality to strike her with a blow 1,000 times more painful than Vance's physical beatings? Nobody is ever going to want me, Lyra whispered, her long eyelashes hiding the storm of emotions in her eyes. She won't want me this time either. That is bull crap, Kane said. My parents love you and they wish you were their actual biological daughter. Kane reached out, his heart aching as he gently patted her head. You're just a kid, he said. Do not be so pessimistic. You are just a slightly unlucky kid. You know, you already endured a lifetime's worth of suffering from others before you even hit 8, so from now on, it is going to be smooth sailing and full of happiness. Everything is going to get better, okay? Hearing this, Lyra lifted her head to look at Kane, her eyes sparkling. Really? Kane nodded firmly. Really? Then brother won't ever abandon me, right? She pushed further in a tiny voice. Reaching out her small hand, she gently grabbed the hem of his shirt. Kane felt like something about this conversation was veering into slightly dangerous territory, but seeing her look like she was about to burst into tears at any second, he still nodded. Relax, I got you. Honestly, Kane didn't get it. If he had a daughter this beautiful and well behaved, how could he ever bear to part with her? Her family was a literal circus of psychos. Talk about a plot twist in a blind spot where Kane couldn't see. Gently hooked the corners of her mouth into a smirk. See, people with kind hearts are so incredibly easy to fool, she thought. I will absolutely guarantee that Kane never gets fooled by anyone else other than me. Meanwhile, Kane realized that the more he understood Lyra, the more he comprehended why she morphed into that monster in his past life. It was a miracle she even survived to adulthood. let alone growing up without turning completely twisted. In this life, he was going to work his absolute hardest to raise her into a decent, upstanding citizen. She's so smart, she'll definitely be able to contribute to society in the future. By the time Lyra and Kane were released from his room, Selena had vanished. Kane's mom held Lyra's hand, her eyes brimming with heartache. Lyra, Auntie needs to tell you something. Your dad committed manslaughter. He's probably going away for a few years. Hearing this, Lyra nodded, her face completely void of emotion. Logically speaking, you should go live with your mother, but your mom might find it a bit inconvenient. From now on, how about you live with Auntie Evelyn, Uncle Arthur? And Kane's mom's face was etched with helplessness. Just moments ago, Selena had literally dropped to her knees, begging, saying she was about to get married and her fiancé had no idea she had a daughter. She claimed her hands were tied. At the time, Kane's mom's expression was frosty, but Selena probably noticed her soft heart. She even threatened that if Evelyn wasn't willing to take her, she'd just go knock on the doors of other neighbors in the complex. Evelyn thought of the sweet, well-behaved little Lyra. Leave her with the neighbors? Absolutely not. She couldn't trust them. Lyra, your mom didn't abandon you. She left a bank card and will deposit money every month. From now on, if Lyra ever missed her mother, Kalin's mom promised to help them connect. But before Kalin's mother could even finish her sentence, she heard Lyra speak up softly. The little girl begged. She wanted to stay, promising to give them all her money just to go to school and get a bite to eat, promising she would be good and never cause any trouble. She reached out and gently tugged on the edge of his mother's shirt, begging her, please, do not throw me away. Right then and there, Kalin watched his mother burst into tears. Well, great. The future little psycho was officially his new live-in sister now. Honestly, Kalin felt a little thrilled. He hoped the abusive Vance would rot in prison forever. That way, in this lifetime, Lyra could finally grow up healthy and safe. Just like that, Lyra moved into their house permanently. Nobody really knew how many years in prison Vance was actually going to get. Selena remained vague about details. Kalin's mother even speculated that Selena wanted nothing to do with Lyra, none at all, but she feared being reported for child abandonment. His mother even muttered about how Lyra's stubborn life force was as stubborn as Vance's. How did she survive? His mother's hushed voice drifted from the bedroom, laced with pure fury. Standing by the door, Kalin felt the exact same anger. In her original home, nobody wanted Lyra to live, not even her own parents. A suffocating wave of rage and powerlessness washed over him. Now all of Lyra's tense, hyper-cautious Eggshell's behavior in their house had a horrifyingly clear origin. Kalin turned around and tiptoed back to his room. The second he stepped inside, he saw a figure sitting on the padded floor mat. His heart nearly jumped out of his chest, and he almost cursed out loud, but the tiny silhouette suddenly turned her head and whispered, "Brother." Kalin exhaled a massive breath and walked over, keeping his voice low, asking why she was not sleeping. She replied that she had a nightmare, waking up to realize he was gone. Her voice was tiny, laced with a tearful tremor. Out of habit, she reached out and gripped the hem of his pajama shirt. In the dim light, Kalin caught a glimpse of moisture glistening in her eyes. Had she woken up crying, thinking of the horrific secrets he had just overheard? Kalin sighed, reached out, and held her tiny hand. He gently told her to get up off the cold floor, explaining he had just gone out to get some water. Lyra followed his gentle pull and stood up, but she made absolutely no move to climb into bed. She just stood frozen. Kalin looked at her, hesitating. He asked if she was scared to sleep alone, promising he would not leave again. She whispered, asking to make a pallet on the floor just to be a little closer to him. Her voice was barely a whisper, trembling slightly. She confessed she was scared to sleep up there. It felt too far away. It was a good thing the lights were off. Otherwise, Kalin would have seen her sheer, unadulterated excitement that she did not even bother to hide. She did, in fact, have a dream, but in it, she took a knife and ended Vance's life. Waking up, the rush of adrenaline made her entire body tremble, her eyes shining with dark delight. She had climbed out of bed the second she heard Kalin's footsteps. She knew he was a total softie, especially knowing how badly Selena treated her. Lyra detested being pitied, but if the person showing her pity was Kalin, that was a completely different story. He stood. He faced her in the pitch-black silence. Neither said a word, only the sound of their breathing filled the room. Finally, he shifted over, making a little room. Just get up here for tonight, he offered. Lyra broke into a massive grin and scrambled up the bed with lightning speed. only daring to claim. Microscopic sliver of space, claiming she did not thrash around in her sleep. He thought to himself that he was actually the one who thrashed around. He lay side by side with Lyra, staring into the darkness. Suddenly, he offered to tell her bedtime story. She agreed, so he began telling her about an old man. He had 12 sons. Their names were Prosperity, Democracy, Civility, Harmony, but Lyra interrupted, asking if those were the core socialist values. Hesitant, timid voice had interrupted him, telling her to zip it. He felt embarrassed and annoyed. How did an 8-year-old already know all of this stuff? Then he told her to recite them, ordering her to do so every night. As she started reciting, he eventually drifted off to sleep. She soon fell asleep as well with the easy peace of youth. Seeing that he was completely dead to the world, Lyra slowly turned her head toward him. She could only make out the blurry silhouette of his profile. She smiled and slowly inched closer to him. Only when he instinctively rolled over and pulled her into his arms did she satisfyingly close her eyes. He was a bit heavy, but Lyra felt unbelievably safe. It was a sense of security she had not felt since she was 5 years old. After that night, he finally decided to fully accept Lyra and vowed to raise her right. After all, she had not turned into a psycho yet. He did not want to die, nor did he want Lyra to go down with him. The final verdict on Vance's case was manslaughter, sentenced to 7 years in prison, which meant for the next 7 years, Lyra was completely safe. A while later, he developed a new, incredibly annoying problem. Why on earth did his roommate have so many nightmares? 2 or 3 times a week she stood pitifully by his bed, reciting those core socialist values. Like a chanting monk, he warned that another nightmare meant calling his mother. He glared at Lyra as she stood right there by the bed, his tone anything but friendly. Lyra blinked, her eyelashes curled perfectly, her eyes were clear, and she looked completely innocent, but he was completely immune now. Every time she climbed into his bed, she was an angel. But the next morning, he would inevitably be holding her like a giant teddy bear. It hardly felt appropriate since they were not toddlers anymore. After half a year at his house, Lyra's complexion had cleared up, turning porcelain white. She had gained some healthy baby fat on her cheeks. She had grown taller, slowly blossoming into a pretty young girl. But whenever she looked at him, she was still as soft and clingy as ever. At his scolding, she simply promised to get in bed only after she finished her recitation. Saying that, she turned around looking utterly heartbroken. He suddenly called out for her to hold on. When she turned back, her eyes shining as he asked what she would do if she saw Fiona and Thorn fighting. Internally, Lyra wanted them to beat each other to death, thinking she would be a saint for not handing them weapons, but meeting his serious, stern gaze, she replied earnestly, saying she would try to stop them and tell someone to find a teacher. Kalin nodded in satisfaction, telling her to get in bed and sleep. He knew she was salvageable. Based on his recent observations, it was finally working. His efforts were paying off. Seeing him happy, Lyra felt glad. Said good night, brother, and climbed under the covers. In the middle of the night, Kalin woke up needing to use the bathroom. He opened his eyes and saw Lyra lying on the rug right next to his bed. The very next day, he announced to his parents that he was almost 9 years old, and sleeping in the same room was completely inappropriate now. Lyra looked down at her porridge and tightened her grip right on her spoon. Her brother was not cooperating. At home, Lyra was the epitome of the perfect child, but at school, the ice queen. She gave everyone the cold shoulder, except for Kalin, which was pretty obvious. But because he constantly nagged her to get along with classmates, she finally got semi-friends. Even Brian, the kid who used to bully her, loved hanging out with her. Now, fast forward to 6th grade, she had become the idol of basically half the school, mainly because her grades were obscenely good and incredibly stable. Just look at Kalin's grades in comparison. He still wanted to go play instead, but his mother ordered him back to study. Honestly, his grades weren't even that bad. It's just that Lyra was on a completely different stratosphere with a direct comparison. Living under the same roof, his mom was never satisfied. Don't ask him why a reincarnated adult couldn't outscore an 11-year-old child. Honestly, try being a 26-year-old college graduate tackling 6th grade math. Talk about an absolute ego death. It was a total ego death every single time. Hearing his mom order him to study, Lyra piped up, offering to tutor Kalin. He shot her a glare and internally chuckled. Yeah, right, he thought. She had gotten taller but did not even call him brother anymore, in stark contrast to the hurricane-level fury his Mom directed at Kalin. She was a literal saint to Lyra, saying she could not let it affect her studies. Mr. Thunder said that with her grades she was a shoo-in for first middle school. Lyra said seriously that she could manage it, wanting to go to first middle school with Kalin, saying that she shot a glance at him. Kalin sighed, insisting he could get his grades up on his own. His mom looked at the two of them and nodded, saying they would talk later because they had to move tomorrow. That was right, they were finally moving out. His mom had been desperately trying to move them away from here, hoping that when Vance got out he wouldn't be able to track them down. After all, Vance never cared about his daughter anyway, but in Evelyn's heart, Lyra was basically her own flesh and blood. That night was their very last night sharing a room in the new house. They would each have their own bedrooms. Compared to Kalen's absolute elation, Lyra was noticeably displeased, especially when she saw him pull a tiny pink gift box out of his backpack. Her eyes instantly iced over. Honestly, Kalin was pretty flabbergasted himself, wondering what the heck it even was, but he quickly put two and two together, realizing some girl at school probably shoved it in there. He dug around inside and found a pink sticky note with an ICQ number scribbled on it. The message asked Kalin if they could be internet friends and discuss their homework together. Yeah, right, because Kalin just loved studying so much. He packed the thing back up, planning to return it first thing Monday morning. Kalin was no creep. He would never react weirdly to an 11 or 12-year-old girl flirting with him. None of that, just pure, awkward silence. Lyra stared at his actions with wide eyes. In a ghostly tone, she asked him, "Brother, what is that?" Kalin replied with absolute sincerity, "Little girls do not need to know, just focus on studying." Lyra did not say a word, she just staring at him. Her face was tight, looking extremely upset. Seeing this, he simply reached out and manually rotated her head back toward her books. "Do your math problems." Lyra pressed her lips into a thin line. She let out a soft, "Oh, it did not matter." She could guess who gave it to him. Kalin is her brother. Nobody is taking him away. Now get this, that night, Kalin stared at Lyra standing by his bed, clutching a pillow. "Brother," she said, "I am scared. I want to sleep with you," Lyra declared righteously. Kalin. He took a deep breath, stood up, and pointed at the mountain of stuffed animals on her bed. Big ones, small ones, every single one bought by him. "What are you scared of?" "Scared they will come alive and eat you." Kalin did not expect Lyra to nod. She had a dream that Spider-Man bit her and she turned into a spider, while Captain America led an army of superheroes to chase her down. They claimed she was a monster. She ran into Dorman halfway and even he refused to save her. Watching her spew this absolute nonsense without blinking, Kalin could only marvel at this bizarre superhero crossover. But hey, it worked. His dad walked past the door at that exact moment. "You little punk, itching for a beating again." Kalin absolutely was. "Not Dad, we are going to sleep now," he yelled, then watched as the fugitive wanted by Captain America nimbly scaled onto his bed, even though he was super reluctant. Once Lyra got up there, she was not leaving. Stubbornly, Kalin decided to yank her blanket over to his bed too. One blanket per person, otherwise, Lyra would definitely wake up freezing after he inevitably stole all the covers. This girl was stubborn as a mule. Even if she was freezing, she would not snatch the blanket back. She would just lie there, freezing. Once she literally caught a terrible cold because of it, and he got reamed out by his mom. Honestly, how was that his fault? She had her own bed but insisted on squeezing into his. That night, after Lyra dutifully recited the core socialist values, Kalin asked his routine quiz question: "If you face an opponent much stronger than you in a fight, what do you do?" Lyra stared at him with her huge eyes. "Protect myself first, then wait for brother, uncle, and auntie to come save her." Kalin gave a grunt of approval. "Remember that. Do not be like when you were little, always trying to take everyone down with you. Remember, his parents and he are waiting for her. She is wanted. She has lots of friends and she has them." His voice grew softer and softer until he eventually dozed off. Lyra, who was originally fuming with rage at the thought of someone trying to steal her brother, suddenly felt all her anger evaporate. Just moments ago, she was plotting how to terrorize that girl and scare her away, but now she suddenly did not want to do any of that. She just wanted to be the perfect girl in his eyes forever. Lyra whispered that it was what he liked, wishing her brother good night. Then she closed her eyes in complete peace. Early the next morning, the moving company arrived. He knew buying this house had essentially drained his parents' entire Life savings, Aunt Brenda sneered at Evelyn, saying she must have made a killing raising Lyra these past few years, mockingly noting she was buying a brand new house. That sour, sarcastic voice belonged to Aunt Brenda from upstairs, the self-proclaimed great philanthropist. He had heard his fair share of her passive, aggressive nonsense. Who knows where she got her information, but a rumor was spreading that Selena had struck it rich and was paying them a massive fortune every month to raise Lyra. Back then, every time they came home from school, they would run into Aunt Brenda in the stairwell or courtyard. She would try to drag Lyra to her house for dinner, dropping heavy hints that she wanted to take over custody until one day Lyra, looking pitiful but speaking with a loud voice, announced right in the middle of the crowded courtyard. She said Auntie Brenda's food smelled funny, and even the dog downstairs refused to eat it, so she did not want their food. Blackie was the neighborhood stray dog. Just like that, the self-proclaimed great philanthropist's true colors were exposed for the whole complex to see. She immediately pivoted to gossiping to anyone who would listen that Lyra was an ungrateful child, and that Evelyn might look kind but had a wicked heart, claiming his mom was probably secretly abusing Lyra. Talk about some absolutely shameless audacity. Now Brenda was back, asking why Evelyn did not sell the old house. His mom was usually a woman of infinite patience, at least with others. Everyone called her gentle, except when she had to deal with him. Hearing Brenda's words, his mom flashed a cold smile that did not reach her eyes. She offered it for $6,500 per square meter, the going rate. But as old neighbors, she would drop it to $6,000 in cash. Hearing this proposal, Aunt Brenda's greedy smile completely froze on her face. She complained, pointing out that Evelyn bought the place for $3,500. Back then, accusing her of opening her mouth a bit too wide. Since they had a new home, they should not hoard all the luck. Brenda claimed she gave Lyra plenty of food back, then, without asking for a dime. She grumbled that even a fed stray dog would at least guard her door. Hearing this, his mom's face darkened. She snapped that even a dog would not touch her garbage food, telling Brenda to ask Vance or Selena. It was the very first time she had completely dropped her polite act. She told Brenda to get out of the way of the movers. Brenda's face turned beet red. She stomped to their doorway, spat, and sneered, asking Lyra why she was so smug about this move. She claimed they did not help out of goodness, but for money. Brenda warned Lyra that they might force her to be their child bride. He let out a gasp and grabbed a broom, ready for war. His mom yanked him back by his hood, telling him not to engage with them. She said those people were rotten, which was why they were moving away. She looked over at Lyra, who was standing quietly by the doorway. Standing near the bedroom door, she had heard God knows how much. Evelyn called Lyra, "Come here." Lyra walked over. Kalin's mom looked at the beautifully raised girl right in front of her and felt a surge of real joy. She reached out to tuck a stray strand of hair behind Lyra's ear, revealing those stunning eyes. "Lyra, do not take Aunt Brenda's words to heart. You are a wonderful girl, and you deserve to be loved by many people. She's just unhinged and delusional," Kalin chimed in from the side. "Besides, child brides are not even a thing in modern society." Hearing this, his mom rolled her eyes to the heavens, raising a hand as if to smack him. "Is that really the main point right now?" She pulled Lyra closer and said, "Your uncle and I keep a meticulous record of every penny spent on you each year. If you ever want to see it, we can show you everything. Your Aunt Brenda." "Auntie, I know what you mean, and I do not listen to her anyway." Lyra cut her off. "Auntie, I am not a toddler anymore. I know who is good and who is bad." Saying that, she gave Evelyn the sweetest, most innocent smile imaginable. Watching from the sidelines, Kalin noticed that the sweetly smiling Lyra secretly shot a chilling glance toward the front door. Her long eyelashes masked the true emotion in her eyes, but Kalin's gut screamed that something was deeply wrong. Do not ask why, just call it his intuition. Sure enough, after his parents made a few trips up and down, asking them to bring their stuff down, he realized Lyra had vanished. Suddenly, something clicked in his brain. He glanced at the apartment door across the hall. Sure enough, there were fresh fingerprints in the dust on the door frame. He glanced up the stairs. Upstairs was Aunt Brenda's apartment. Lyra had been a perfect angel for years, but just now, when he could not read the emotion in her eyes, he suddenly remembered the gloomy, chilling aura she had in the stairwell right after he was reborn. He marched upstairs, right to the landing outside Aunt Brenda's apartment. He found Lyra, who clearly had not expected him to come up there. She instinctively tried To hide whatever was in her hands. What are you doing up here? He stared at her. What is in your hand? Lyra pursed her lips in dead silence, but her hand subconsciously clenched into a tight fist, the sharp metal thumbtacks pierced straight into her palm, yet she barely felt a sting. Her facial expression did not even twitch. She managed to flash a smile, saying nothing. Let's go. Downstairs, saying that, she tried to brush past him. He shot his hand out and grabbed her wrist in an iron grip. Show me. Lyra's hand gave an uncontrollable tremor, but she refused to open her fist. Instead, she asked Kalin, if I do something wrong, will you get mad at me? She paused and then added, I have not done it yet, so it does not count as doing something wrong. Right after saying that, she shot him a terrifyingly cautious glance, but Kalin just stared at her, his face a mask of cold stone. Then he ordered, open your hand. Lyra was actually terrified of him, terrified that he would be angry. That scarred, trembling hand slowly uncurled. Inside, it was already a bloody, mangled mess. She whispered, I did not do anything bad. Do not be mad. Kalin has an incredibly long fuse. He rarely lost his temper, and honestly, over these past few years, Lyra was so smart and obedient that she never once did anything to anger him. This was the very first time she had ever seen him. He had never been this furious. His hands shook as he stared at Lyra's palm. A handful of thumbtacks were pierced deep into her skin, yet she seemed completely immune to the pain, even after clenching her fists so tightly just moments ago. Even now, she had not let out a single whimper. You wanted to get revenge on Brenda by planting thumbtacks on the stairs. Do you have any idea that if someone slips on these and hits their head, they could literally die? His voice was ice cold as his gaze shifted to the cooking oil tucked away in the corner. He had spotted it the second he walked up. Suddenly, his mom's voice echoed from downstairs. Kane, are you guys done packing? As if snapping out of a trance, Lyra panicked. She desperately reached out, trying to grab the hem of his shirt, just like in the old days when she was small, but her hand froze midair. It was bloody, and her brother was wearing a pristine white shirt today. Plus, Kane had stepped back to dodge her. He was genuinely furious. For so long, Lyra had acted so perfectly. He arrogantly believed his influence over the years had actually fixed her, but looking at the thumbtacks and oil, he realized he was way too arrogant, taking everything for granted. Lyra was not a normal kid. Brother, I am sorry. I was wrong. I will never do it again. I did not mean to do anything drastic. She cursed at auntie and uncle, and she cursed at you. I just wanted to teach her a lesson. His mom's footsteps were already coming up the stairs. Lyra's voice grew increasingly frantic. Brother, don't abandon me. If auntie and the others find out, they will be so disappointed. They will think I am a bad kid. Her eyes turned red with tears. She brought up his mom. She brought up his dad. She brought up him. The only person she completely left out of the equation was herself. Even her twisted revenge was for them, not herself. Kane took a deep, shuddering breath and turned around, refusing to look at her. Follow me since it does not hurt. Hide your hand. Well, so you do not get caught. Then he strode down the stairs and successfully intercepted and distracted his mom. Even though it was practically the peak of summer, Lyra felt her entire back drenched in a cold sweat. She did not know if it was pain or terror, the dread that Kane would abandon her. Honestly, his family was a bit unusual. This apartment complex, his mom was a teacher, his dad a doctor. They were highly educated, decent people, and his mom hated engaging neighborhood gossip or drama. So when the situation with Lyra went down, the neighbors gossiped endlessly behind their backs. Lyra utterly despised this place. She tried with all her might to fit into their family, to escape from this hellhole. After patching her wound in secret, she followed them to their new home. They had visited the place plenty of times before, so there was no real novelty. Kane tried to help unpack, but his parents chased him back to his room to study. Then he saw Lyra standing at his door, clutching her backpack like a perfectly disciplined soldier. Brother, can I do homework with you? He did not utter words, simply turning away. Lyra hesitated at the doorway for a second. Finally, she tentatively stepped inside, relieved that he did not kick her out. Lyra let out a massive internal sigh of relief. Over the years, she had mapped out Kane's temper and his bottom lines with pinpoint accuracy. He was the most naive, easily fooled person she had ever met, because Auntie Evelyn and Uncle Arthur protected him too well, and because he was constantly surrounded by goodwill and kindness. Lyra wanted to protect that too, because only when she was with him did she feel like she could pretend to be exactly like him, so she wanted to Protect him, and she never wanted to make him angry. Brother, I won't be so impulsive ever again, but I just can't stomach them talking trash about you. Guys behind your backs. Lyra laid her head on Kane's desk, looking up at him with ultimate puppy dog eyes. He read right through it. She was apologizing, sure. But she wasn't actually sorry. Let me ask you something, Lyra. His expression remained dead serious. If you run into someone like Brenda again in the future, are you just going to resort to violent revenge every single time? Lyra went silent for a moment. If their mouths are as foul as hers and they insult you, guys, I will still do it. Insulting me is one thing, but insulting you guys is unacceptable. Hurting you guys is unacceptable. He looked at her, feeling a profound, soul-crushing exhaustion. He stared at her and said with absolute sincerity, Lyra, if you fight back to protect yourself, that is your absolute right, but the first thing you did wrong today was knowing you had thumbtacks in your hand and still choosing to mangle your own flesh. Lyra was stunned. Wait. Her first mistake wasn't having the thought of violent revenge. Your second mistake was that you can seek revenge, sure, but you cannot act without calculating the catastrophic consequences. Yes, Brenda is infuriating, but she isn't some ultimate unforgivable evil. Did she really deserve to potentially die for being annoying? Lyra knew her moral compass was completely misaligned with normal people, so she maintained her silence. The third thing, Lyra, you mentioned everyone in our family, but you didn't mention yourself, even though you were the one who suffered the most abuse from them. Remember this. No matter what happens, you must put yourself first, especially when it comes to protecting yourself. Do you understand? Lyra stared at him, watching his eyes soften. She reached up and pressed a hand over her own heart. Of course, and casually protect me while you're at it. Don't hurt me. He awkwardly tacked on that last sentence. After all, in his past life, he was genuinely an innocent victim in all of this. Emphasizing it one more time couldn't hurt, right? Lyra suddenly let out a bright laugh, then she nodded her head emphatically. I know I will protect you. I will never ever hurt you, but as an exchange condition, Kane, you have to belong to me forever. He looked at her, feeling a massive headache coming on. He never had younger siblings in his past life. He literally had zero clue how to raise a child. He used to be so confident because she had been so impossibly perfect all these years, but today's incident completely nuked his confidence. From orbit, he looked at Lyra, who now looked completely at peace, reached out and pressed his hand firmly onto the top of her head. Gritting his teeth, he threatened her. Lyra, if there is a next time, I will end you, he muttered under his breath. If Mom finds out, she will string you up and beat you. But Lyra knew she wouldn't. Auntie Evelyn would string Kalin up and beat him, but she would never do that to her. Kalin asked if she was ever going to fix her habit of calling him brother only when she wanted something, and Kalin when she did not. She asked if he would take care of her forever, but he just scoffed, asking who would want to take care of her. The boy's voice dripped with exasperation, but upon seeing the radiant smile on the girl's face, the annoyance in his eyes melted into pure warmth. Later that night, before they went to their separate rooms to sleep, Kalin reached out and flicked Lyra's forehead with actual force. He warned her that next time he would end her. Lyra obediently replied that she would just avoid getting caught. Right before she stepped into her room, Kalin called out, telling her to stop living in constant fear. He promised that nobody was ever going to throw her away. From the moment they welcomed her and decided to take care of her, abandoning her was never an option, even when they got angry. Hearing this reassurance, Lyra was like a feral cat soothed by its owner, completely satisfied. No more wild stunts followed, at least not during their winter break that year. Since Kalin aced his final exams, he won the prize of taking swimming lessons. Lyra was supposed to go too, but Kalin completely derailed those plans and shoved her into Sanda kickboxing classes instead. After all, Vance had almost beaten her to death in 6th grade during his past life. He had to make sure she could defend herself. Plus, she was incredibly pretty, and as she grew older, she would only get prettier. Honestly, Kalin felt like a worried parent, constantly fretting over her. He could not be by her side 24/7, so she had to learn how to save herself. Eventually, Kalin offered one final, absolutely unbeatable argument. She had to learn how to fight to protect him, just like she promised. That did it. The highly reluctant Lyra agreed, and they took separate classes in different places, but as soon as Lyra finished her training, she would sprint to find him so they could walk home together. After the new year, they turned 12, and Kalin prepared for middle school. entrance exams, successfully getting them both accepted into the first. Middle school, then their mother Selena showed up again, pregnant and bearing gifts. She brought them expensive new phones and a tablet as a graduation gift, claiming they were middle school gifts, but both Kalin and Lyra met her with complete and total indifference, which made Selena look incredibly awkward. Kalin's mother sensed the rising tension and told them to head back to their rooms to study. Once they were inside, Lyra was unnervingly calm, prompting him to ask if she was curious about what her mother had to say. She dryly replied that Selena likely just wanted to tell her never to bother her again. Looking at Selena's huge pregnant belly, Lyra guessed she came to drop off a lump sum of money to cover college costs, wanting to never see her daughter again. It was her way of completely severing all ties. Her voice was terrifyingly flat, as if she were merely discussing the weather. Kalin was completely stunned into silence. After a pause, he dryly remarked that she had her mother pretty well figured out. Neither of them mentioned it again, quietly moving on. They were previewing their new textbooks. From the living room, Kane heard the front door open. In close, Selena was finally gone. He stood up to find an excuse. He offered to go wash some fruit for them. Lyra watched him turn and rush out. She wanted to sigh. That excuse of his was honestly pretty terribly constructed, since usually she was the one washing the fruit. But when Kane stepped outside, the living room table still held all the tech gifts Selena had left behind. But there was a new addition, a bank card. Hearing his footsteps, his mom snapped her head toward him. Her face looked terrible as she waved him over. She told Kane to come over. He walked closer, glaring down at the card. Anger flared in his chest. Seriously, who drops a card and just walks away? His mom looked at him with slight surprise. She admitted that was basically it. Unless there was a life or death emergency, they were never supposed to reach out. The money was meant for Lyra. It would cover everything from middle school through college. 300,000. It was undeniably a massive sum of money for them. In normal times, it would be plenty, but that was assuming a normal scenario, one without any massive curveballs. Yet his mom was just deeply furious, angry at how desperate Selena was to sever all ties with young Lyra. Her heart bled for the girl, and Kane's did too. Lyra was so incredibly sweet, so smart, so unbelievably beautiful, yet Selena had not even spared her a glance. Not even a look. The mother and son stood in heavy silence for a moment. His mom reached out, gently stroking his head. Kane, from now on, Lyra only has us. She admitted she had been pretty strict with him, but only wanted them safe, to grow up healthy and safe, and hopefully to become truly exceptional people. He smiled gently. Mom, I know, but we should keep this a secret. They needed to hide the truth from Lyra. He kept his voice very low. Selena had not visited in years anyway, so her complete absence changed nothing. They just could not let Lyra know this goodbye was permanent, even though she was smart enough to have likely guessed it already. But without official confirmation, it was still just a guess. His mom sighed. She nodded, but neither of them noticed. His bedroom door was slightly open. Lyra silently clicked the door shut, slipping away without making a sound. In her heart, she did not find any of this hard to accept at all. She was just wondering if she could use this to crawl into his bed. Tonight, would he go soft and let her stay? She stared at his bed, her eyes filled with deep longing. She was just a traumatized little girl. Sleeping in her brother's bed is totally reasonable, right? Wrong, completely unreasonable. Kane physically dragged her out of his bed. They were in middle school now. Boys and girls are different. Do not think about it. Even when Lyra made her most pitiful face, pleading that she felt a bit lonely, he scoffed coldly and dragged her back to her room. Opening the door, he faced a room decorated in a super girly pink aesthetic. The only jarring sight was the absolute mountain of stuffed animals. On her bed, a chaotic mix of Marvel superheroes and mythological figures. Along with cardcaptor Sakura, he pointed at the 7 Calabash brothers, toys he had literally just bought for her, asking what she was doing. Scared of what? If she admitted being afraid, he threatened to call his mom. Lyra stared in silence at the plushies on her bed. She had visited her good friend Fiona's house before. Other girls had Barbie dolls and adorable fluffy stuffed animals, but it did not matter. Hers were cute too, because every single one of them was given to her by Kalin. Lyra knew her mission was a failure tonight. Disappointed, she surrendered and wished him a good night. Saying that, she flashed him a sweet smile. It was fine, because she would just wait until he fell asleep to sneak over, then sneak back to her room. Before he woke up, once Kalin fell fast asleep, you could have a massive earthquake and he would not react. Coma-like sleep. At 1 a.m., his bedroom door clicked open silently. After entering, Lyra stood by his bedside, watching him silently for quite a while before she quietly slipped under the covers. The moment she lay down and got close to him, the boy instinctively reached out and pulled her small body into his arms. Lyra smiled triumphantly, her eyes incredibly gentle. In her heart, she whispered a quiet good night. Kalin was completely oblivious to all of this talk about being clueless. All he knew was his body slept like the absolute dead. Back when he was 10, a minor earthquake hit in the middle of the night. The whole bed shook, and his entire family woke up in a panic except for him, snoring like a chainsaw. His dad genuinely thought he had a neurological disorder. He took time off work to drag him to the hospital for the result, absolutely nothing, just a kid with zero stress sleeping well. Every day at dawn, after finishing her homework, Lyra would sneak out, waking up at 5 a.m. to scurry back to her room. His mom woke up at 5:30 a.m. Through sheer willpower. She kept this routine up for over a year. Not a single soul in the house noticed. Now they were in middle school. Lyra and Kalin were still in the same class. Thorne and Brian were also in their class. All four of them were pretty stoked to have familiar faces around. Of course, Lyra was only pretending to be stoked. In her heart, she was not happy at all. She infinitely preferred it when Kalin's eyes were only focused on her. Plus, this meant she had absolutely no excuse to be his deskmate anymore. At the new school, barely anyone knew about Lyra's family background. They only knew Lyra called Kalin brother and that they lived together, so everyone just assumed they were relatives. Instantly, Kalin gained a massive horde of little brothers opening their mouths to call him bro, mostly just guys trying to butter him up so they could fish for info about Lyra. To this, he dealt with every single one of them with a metaphorical baseball bat. He had painstakingly raised this pristine cabbage himself. No one was taking a bite out of her. By the time they hit 8th grade, everyone in class 3 knew Kalin had a massive sister complex. Coincidentally, Lyra had a massive brother complex. Talk about perfect matches. Birds of a feather. A 9th grade guy targeting Lyra just ran up to Kalin and challenged him to a match. If Kalin lost, he had to deliver a love letter to Lyra. At first, Kalin totally ignored them, but then the gang blocked Kalin and would not let him leave. Brian's voice was dripping with absolute disgust, but the only thing Lyra processed was that it was because of her. Kalin was getting harassed. That was the last straw. Lyra stood up to go check it out. Seeing Lyra finally willing to leave the classroom, Brian's eyes lit up instantly. Watching good drama unfold was her absolute favorite. On the way, Lyra walked past the school store. She casually bought a freezing cold bottle of water from the convenience store. Kalin was sweating from playing basketball and definitely needed a cold drink. When they reached the courts, almost every area was packed with people. But one specific court had a massive crowd swarming around it. Brian pointing right at the center. She claimed Kalin and Thorne were super popular. She spoke with absolute, swooning admiration while staring eagerly at the court. Naturally, she missed Lyra's face turning black. Talk about bad timing. Lyra already knew her deep possessiveness over Kalin was bordering on something abnormal. And he talked about how popular he was absolutely disgusted her. She loathed seeing other boys and girls swarming him on the court. Meanwhile, Kalin's expression was icy as his arm throbbed from a brutal body check. These self-proclaimed upperclassmen were playing dirty as hell. Honestly, Kalin did not even want to play after stepping out for a relaxing stroll. He only wanted to buy some snacks for Lyra to escape exam stress, but got barricaded. Ignoring them completely was his plan until their leader opened his mouth. The guy threatened to wait at the school gates and ambush Lyra after school. That completely set him off. To him, these punks were just annoying obstacles. They were standing in the way of Lyra's peaceful school life. Worse, these guys had zero intention of playing a clean game. Their arrogant leader, Garrett, just smirked in his face. He taunted them, asking if the little juniors could not handle a real match. Saying that, he pulled a crumpled piece of paper out of his pocket. Another guy snickered, asking if they should start calling Lyra's sister-in-law next time. The joke sent the entire gang of bullies into roaring laughter. Kalin's face darkened into a mask of pure, unadulterated menace. He grabbed the basketball and slammed it straight down onto the concrete court. The ball did not hit anyone, but the violent impact was deafening. Kalin stared them down as the massive sound instantly shut them up. He told them to keep playing, mocking their egos over a 3-point lead. There was still a half-court game left just as Lyra and Brian arrived. The game had just tipped off when Garrett charged straight at Kalin again. Expecting another dirty body check, Kalin stood his ground without dodging. The moment they collided, Kalin brutally drove his elbow into the bully's ribs. Garrett let out a howl of agony, immediately accusing Kalin of playing dirty. Kalin just tilted his chin up, locking his freezing gaze onto the senior. With a cold stare, he asked who the real sore loser was in this situation. He warned that if they wanted to play, they had to follow the damn rules. Otherwise, they could get off the court, prompting Garrett to demand an apology. Garrett and his gang were far too used to bullying others with numbers. He absolutely refused to take this humiliation lying down and lunged forward. But before he could grab Kalin, a basketball flew out of nowhere. It smashed directly into Garrett's shoulder, cutting him off mid-sentence. A sharp curse followed by the dull thud of the basketball. Garrett clutched his shoulder, stumbling backward. Everyone watched as a girl in a school uniform holding a bottle of water walked over at a leisurely pace. With an expression of absolute, freezing indifference, she walked right up to his side. Every single guy on the court had his eyes glued to her, but Lyra acted like they were invisible, simply handing the ice-cold water to him. Noticing him sweat, she frowned slightly, pulled out a packet of tissues, and handed them over. He took them, asking why she had come down in stark contrast to her icy glare at everyone else. When she spoke to him, her voice was soft as marshmallow, saying she came to see why he was neglecting his practice exams. Garrett, whose face was twisted in rage a moment ago, actually blushed when he saw Lyra. Hearing her soft voice, his eyes lit up even more. He already thought she was pretty, but seeing her up close, she was drop-dead gorgeous. But the gentle, soft way she looked at him was highly irritating. Garrett cleared his throat, putting on his most arrogant tough guy act. He spoke up. Lyra, you are the one who threw that basketball just now, don't you think you owe him an apology? He stepped closer. How about coming to watch a movie with him to call it even? Otherwise, he trailed off with a menacing scoff. Standing next to her, our guy was completely speechless. Seriously, can you believe how greasy this guy is? He raised the ice-cold water Lyra just gave him and shoved it right in front of Garrett's face as he leaned in. With total sincerity, he asked if he had eaten garlic and chive dumplings, because the smell was lingering, pointing out a piece of chive stuck in his teeth. The onlookers could not hold back, bursting into hysterical laughter. Even Lyra covered her face, a tiny smile escaping. Then she reached out and tugged his shirt, telling him they should head back so he could finish his homework and avoid getting yelled at tonight. The moment she thought of the scenes where his mother verbally annihilated him, she wanted to shake her head. He was genuinely too mischievous. Every single time Lyra could not even find an opening to defend him, since he always brought it on himself. Hearing the mocking laughter, Garrett's face turned undeniably ugly, especially with Lyra completely ignoring his existence and only talking to the boy. Completely humiliated and enraged, he reached out to grab Lyra, but the boy remained completely unfazed. Is this a joke? She had trained in Sanda for 3 years. Sure enough, out of nowhere, Lyra whipped out a ballpoint pen and sharply slashed it across Garrett's reaching hand. That sharp sting made him let out a pathetic yelp. Just then, Brian arrived with the dean of students. He told Mr. Sterling they blocked their classmate and wouldn't let him leave, claiming Garrett even tried to grab Lyra. They could see for themselves. Lyra's grades were completely flawless. From the day she enrolled, she had maintained a permanent spot at rank 1 in the entire grade, and was the child of Mrs. Evelyn, another teacher. Director Sterling had always had an immaculate impression of her, unlike Garrett, who had terrible grades in a Garrett was a fighting regular. Sterling's scales of justice had already tipped completely. Sterling asked if he was bullying his classmates again, demanding he go to the office. Garrett was immediately escorted away. Kalin glanced at Lyra. She was staring at the ground, completely lost in thought. He teased her about calling a teacher. Progress. Then, reaching out, he plucked the pen from her hand. Walking past a trash can, he casually tossed it right in. In a slow, drawn-out voice, Kalin muttered that it might have smelled like garlic, so she should trash it, but the water Lyra brought him remained firmly in his grasp. No way was he throwing that away. After all, his little Lyra gave it to him. Suddenly, she reached out and snatched the bottle from his hand, lobbing it straight into the trash can. 2. It was dirty now, she claimed, promising a new one before jogging towards the school store. Rai called out but couldn't stop her in time. Behind Kalin, a guy from their basketball game muttered, enviously wondering how his sister was so perfect. Only Thorn, standing aside, let out a sarcastic scoff. Ever since he got introduced to the wrong end of Lyra's brick in elementary school, he had permanently categorized her as terrifying. Sure, he admitted he was a little punk back then, but her expression that day looked like she was genuinely trying to send him to the afterlife. Just thinking about it made Thorn break out in a cold sweat. Breenie heard Thorn's scoff, turned around, and glared. What was he scoffing at? Who wouldn't want a sister like Lyra? Thorn retorted, telling her to give it a rest. She used to bully her relentlessly. Back then, Breenie claimed she was just young and stupid. Watching the two of them bicker, Kalin was honestly used to it. It was weird to say, but after being reincarnated for so long, he felt like he was slowly readapting to this specific age. The feeling of growing up all over again was actually pretty great. He wasn't some hypermature kid, an overpowered genius like the reincarnated protagonists in web novels. But looking at Lyra jogging back with a fresh bottle of water, the wind tossing her hair slightly, the girl running towards him against the sunlight looked absolutely stunning. Honestly, you've got to admit he did one monumental thing. He pulled this miserable, suffering girl out of the abyss. Thinking about that, he felt deeply satisfied. When Lyra handed the new water bottle to him, he took it, unscrewed the cap, and shoved it right back into her hands, telling her to drink. Why was she running so fast? A guy standing nearby teased, asking why little sister didn't bring them all water too. Kalin laughed and fired back, asking who they were calling little sister, before doling out swift kicks to their shins. Breenie linked arms with Lyra again, saying she just wanted to cuddle with the pretty sister every day. Lyra looked slightly grossed out and dodged her arm, noting she was touching the water. Kalin opened. Breenie sighed that Lyra was a terminal brother. Meanwhile, Lyra's eyes constantly tracked Kalin, and they never strayed for a second. Hearing the sigh, she just let out a soft not denying it because she absolutely was, not a brother but a Kalin. Kalin was in the middle of playfully putting a guy in a headlock. Suddenly, he felt something made Kalin turn around. Sure enough, there was Lyra, staring a hole right through him. What are you staring at? He asks. Get over here, class is starting. Start. The moment the words left his mouth, the warning bell rang. The boys, playing around just a second ago, started screaming like absolute banshees, sprinting back inside. Math is next under Mrs. Evelyn, so everyone has to run for their lives. Kalin ran a few steps with them, then turned back to shout for Lyra. If they were late, his mom would absolutely destroy him. See, she was the math teacher. Even though she was not his homeroom teacher, she still taught there. Class, Kalin already had his master plan fully figured out. Get into that first middle school, high school with Lyra, then use that to convince his parents to let him study art. He absolutely loved his job in his past life, with zero intentions of giving it up in this one. Plus, he noticed Lyra basically never wore shorts, and he remembered exactly why. In his past life, her body was a canvas of horrific overlapping scars, such a stunningly beautiful face on a body riddled with trauma. He wanted to help her if she was willing to design tattoos that could cover up those scars, maybe buy her some special creams. What young girl does not want to feel beautiful? But Kalin has the absolute worst luck. He should not have thought about those scars, because that inevitably made him think of Vance. Then, literally 2 days later, he actually laid eyes on the very man who was supposed to be rotting in jail. Talk about worst-case scenario. He was originally sentenced to 7 years, yet it had barely been 5. How on earth did he get out? The man was tall, looking incredibly thin and significantly aged, but those eyes still harbored that same calculating, venomous malice. Just standing there, he caught the attention of the school security guards, who approached him cautiously. The guard said something, and the man turned around, preparing to leave. But as he turned, as if sensing something, his gaze swept directly over to where Kalin was standing. The boy instinctively whipped his body around, turning his back to him. He had no idea what Vance was doing there. All he knew was he absolutely could not let him spot him. Lyra and Kalin were about to enter 9th grade. If Vance was out now, what would happen to Lyra? How did he even know to come here? He is definitely here for her. After a long, agonizing wait, Kalin finally dared to turn his head. Vance was gone, but Kalin was Completely derailed, unable to focus on anything else, he turned and sprinted all the way home. The second he burst through the door, his eyes locked onto Lyra's bedroom door. It was shut. His mom, working in the kitchen, looked surprised. "You are back," she noted. Usually when sending her kid to the store, he would dawdle for an hour before returning. Seeing him come back empty-handed, she frowned, ready to start scolding, but he aggressively raised a finger to his lips, signaling her to be quiet. His mom swallowed her lecture, looking at him in total confusion. His panicked demeanor made her nervous, asking, "What is wrong, Kalin?" He lowered his voice to a harsh whisper, saying he just saw Vance outside. The moment those words dropped, the color drained from his mom's face. She frowned, looking at him with dead seriousness, asking if he was sure. He could not misread that face. He was standing right outside their school gates, his voice unable to hide his frantic anxiety, begging her to text the aunties from their old neighborhood. She had. She quickly whipped out her phone, getting an instant reply. Looking up at Kalin, her voice trembled as she said he got out early for good behavior. That wasn't even the worst part. The real shocker was that Vance had already been back for a few days. At first, he had absolutely no intention of looking for Lyra. In his eyes, whether she was dead or had run off with someone else, he did not care at all. But unfortunately, while he was out buying booze the other day, he overheard Aunt Brenda and her friends gossiping, and they brought up Lyra. These people had absolutely nothing better to do, and they were still pushing the lie that the family had struck gold, claiming Selena gave them a fortune every year to raise Lyra. The last message from the neighbor warned that she even saw him knocking on Brenda's door that morning, urging Mrs. Evelyn and her family to be extremely careful because Brenda's mouth was a leaky faucet. Now Kalin finally understood exactly how Vance had tracked them down. While others might ignore the man and keep quiet, Aunt Brenda would sing like a canary. His mother let out a heavy sigh, completely overwhelmed with anxiety, wanting to put it aside for now, but Kalin cut her off, his voice dead serious, his sharp eyes staring at her with intense resolve. He reminded her she knew exactly what kind of monster Vance really was. If he did not catch them around their apartment complex, he would likely go straight to the school. Kalin took a deep breath, whispering, back when Lyra was in elementary school, he had literally stormed into her classroom, grabbed her by the hair, and dragged her out, beating her the whole way. That was the traumatizing incident that made everyone isolate her. But now Kalin absolutely refused to let it happen again, his tone completely unwavering. He also refused to let that beast even lay eyes on Lyra. Panicking, his mother asked what they should do. Still completely reeled by her son's intense, adult-like demeanor, she reflexively asked him for a solution, sighing that she wanted to protect Lyra but just had not thought of a solid plan yet. Kalin quietly told her to call Selena. Ever since Selena dropped off that cash, they had not seen hide nor hair of her. She was living her best, completely unburdened life. Back then, she had explicitly refused to transfer Lyra's household registration out of her name. If she had, they would not have to fear Vance tracking them down now. He never expected things to drag on until Vance actually got out of prison and was now knocking on their front door. This could not be delayed any longer. His mother sighed, wondering what Selena could possibly do when she did not even care if Lyra was alive or dead, doubting she would get involved in Vance's mess. But the corners of Kalin's mouth curled up into a cold, ruthless smirk, completely uncharacteristic for a kid. He urged her to ignore Lyra and just ask if Vance finds out they have no money, who she thinks he will hunt down next. Selena was infinitely more terrified of Vance than they were. His mother stared blankly at her son. He had the same familiar features, but a completely alien aura. Kalin, seeing his mother's hesitation, he immediately slapped on his best goofy, helpless smile, asking if she thought what he said could actually work. He joked that is how they do it in novels. Instantly, his mother's brow furrowed. In fury, she asked if Kalin was reading those trashy web novels on his phone, recommended by that green tea manga author again. He let out a sigh and turned around and bolted. Besides, cool guys and pretty girls love reading those. What was wrong with him taking a peek? Just wait, see if he doesn't whip them. At the time, Kalin truly underestimated what a monumental idiot Selena was. He had no idea exactly what his parents said to Selena, but after that, Kalin never spotted Vance lurking around their complex again, nor did he show up at school. Lyra, however, definitely picked up on Kalin's intense absent-mindedness lately. She felt something was severely off with him. basically wherever she went if she was alone, no matter what he was doing, he would drop it and tail her like he was absolutely terrified of her being left alone. This was highly abnormal. At this moment, Lyra put down her pen. Brother, but Kalin did not react. She glanced at his math workbook. He had not solved a single problem. She let out a sigh, reached over and placed her hand over his. Kalin finally snapped out of his trance, staring at her hand resting on his. He somewhat unnaturally pulled his hand away. He asked what was up, but she shot back that was her question. She wanted to know what was wrong. He was spacing out nonstop. Kalin took a good look at her. The little girl had been raised immaculately. Her cheeks were a healthy pink, her delicate, exquisite features fully blossomed. If a girl this beautiful ever got caught by Vance, damn it, Kalin couldn't even stomach that thought. Vance did not even qualify as human, but it was so long, why had not Selena transferred Lyra's registration out yet? Kalin frowned, asking if her household registration book was still with her. Lyra froze for a second, then nodded yes. Didn't they need it for school enrollment? If they got her to transfer her registration to be on the same book as her mom, would she be willing? Kalin looked at Lyra and asked. Honestly, he did not know why, but he always felt like, compared to Vance, Lyra's attitude towards Selena was incredibly bizarre. Her hatred for Vance was straightforward, the kind where she actively wanted to end his life, but towards Selena it was also hatred, yet it did not seem like just pure hatred. Lyra fell silent for a moment. The corners of her mouth curled into a smile, but that smile looked remarkably cold. She did not mind, but wasn't Selena the one refusing to transfer it anyway? Why ask? A strange suspicion flashed through her mind. Normally, Kalin would never bring this up out of the blue. Why today? Something definitely happened. Kalin felt incredibly frustrated. He was the kind of person who literally could not keep a secret to save his life, especially not from the people closest to him. The absolute deepest secret he kept was the fact that he was reincarnated, and barring any absolute disasters, he fully intended to take that secret to his grave, mainly because he did not want anyone knowing that in his past life, he died from overexertion. Heart attack in bed, so right now Kalin just let out an "oh." He was just thinking the sooner they transfer it, the sooner they can relax. Otherwise, when Vance gets out, it is going to be a nightmare. His attitude was perfectly casual, making Lyra, who was starting to get suspicious, think she was just overthinking things, all the way until they finished their final exams. Vance never resurfaced. It actually made Kalin doubt his own eyes. Had he just hallucinated? Slowly he let his guard down. His mom also mentioned that Selena promised she would handle the situation completely, so now his attention was entirely hijacked by Kalin was facing a completely different crisis. When boys reach a certain age, they go through puberty and experience perfectly normal physical changes. Phenomena like wet dreams. The first one hit Kalin like a freight train. That night he hovered between sleep and waking, feeling like someone was lying right next to him. The next morning he woke up convinced it was just a wildly vivid dream. While scrubbing his pants in the sink, he was deeply reflecting on his life choices. What kind of degenerate dream was that? He felt like absolute human garbage because he swore the person lying next to him in that dream felt exactly like Lyra. He felt like a literal monster. At the time, it never even crossed his mind that it was real, and she was actually lying right next to him. For a while after that, Kalin acted incredibly awkward around Lyra. It was hard not to, knowing he had that kind of dream about her. Because of his sudden distance, Lyra's aura during that period grew terrifyingly dark. Due to his cold attitude, Declan asked out of pure curiosity, "Bro, did you two fight?" Kalin was taking a sip from his water bottle when Declan brought it up. He violently coughed, nearly choking to death. No, there were absolutely no fights, he spluttered, asking why. Declan, ever the blunt one, pointed out that he had not been hanging out with her lately and would not even let her follow him. Declan said the sad look in their sister's eyes broke his heart. Then Thorne chimed in. He agreed, saying it was not just them, even the girls in class were gossiping. Kalin was utterly speechless. Did these kids really have nothing better to do? Should he just complain to their mother? They clearly did not have enough homework. Standing up, Kalin snapped that there was no fight, and Lyra was far from pitiful. He was getting defensive. At the end of evening study hall, they still walked home together. Lyra trailed behind Kalin without uttering a single sound. The bus was unusually packed tonight, way more crowded than usual. It felt incredibly claustrophobic, and they were squished tightly Together, physical contact was completely unavoidable, and Lyra clearly felt how Kalin was actively trying to avoid touching her. This immediately triggered her memory of what Fiona had said earlier about Kalin getting a girlfriend. She had warned Lyra she would be heartbroken, so she should look around more. Lyra reasoned that Kalin must have a girlfriend, which is why he was keeping his distance. The moment this thought took root, the rage and possessiveness inside Lyra's heart began to violently rampage. She kept her head down, her eyes swirling with a terrifying touch of madness. She knew there would always be someone trying to steal her beloved brother away. No, he belonged to her. Kalin looked at her swaying unsteadily inside. He reached over, grabbed her hand, and placed it firmly on his wrist. Telling her to hold on tight, Lyra froze as her fingers instinctively clamped down onto his wrist with terrifying force. The grip was so bone crushing. Kalin winced with worry, asking what was wrong and why she kept staring at the floor or if she felt sick. Lyra simply shook her head. Slightly, she was terrified that if she looked up, Kalin would see the sheer insanity burning in her eyes. She was terrified he would be afraid. As she grew older, Lyra became increasingly acutely possessive. She always knew she was fundamentally different from other girls, unlike them. She never cared about boy bands or pop idols. She hated wasting time on TV dramas, brainless music, or gossiping about useless little things. Honestly, none of those trivial things compared to the simple joy of staring blankly at Kalin. She was violently jealous of anyone who dared to get close to him. It got so bad that she even found Auntie Evelyn showing him physical affection irritating to watch. But Lyra was a total master at hiding her darkness, trying her best to act like a normal human. Only then would Kalin stay by her side. But tonight, Kalin could tell she was acting incredibly strange, though she still held the hem of his shirt and followed him home as usual. She was dead silent. This made him feel deeply guilty. Was his recent distancing too obvious? He knew she was incredibly sensitive. Seeing her close her bedroom door, he let out a heavy sigh. Who would have thought a mature soul would suffer from teenage relationship drama? Because of this sudden stress, the boy who normally slept like a rock ended up with terrible insomnia. He tossed and turned all night, unable to rest. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her heartbroken face, looking too terrified to even look up at him anymore. It was agonizing. He cursed himself as an absolute piece of garbage. He was feeling guilty over a stupid dream while breaking a little girl's heart. He resolved to make things right first thing tomorrow. Finally, around 1 in the morning, he managed to drift off into a shallow, restless sleep. So the exact moment he heard the faint click of his bedroom door, he snapped wide awake. He assumed his parents were checking in, but as the footsteps came closer to his bed, he knew something was horribly wrong. He had every single step in this house perfectly memorized, especially his parents. He had learned their sounds years ago to avoid getting beaten. But the silent steps stopping beside his bed now were incredibly light. It was Lyra, but why was she here in the dead of night? Why stand over his bed? His heart began racing at terrifying speeds. He instantly recalled the raw nightmares of his dark past life. Seriously, imagine a silent figure looming over your bed in the dark. He did not dare open his eyes, which was a blessing because Lyra was staring down at him with a completely cold, lifeless face. In her hand, she clutched 2 neckties, her dark gaze fixed on his exposed wrists. She desperately wanted to tie him up and keep him locked in this room forever. But the aunt and uncle were still home. With that thought, a wave of deep disappointment washed over Lyra. Just as he was about to hit his absolute breaking point and open his eyes, he felt her move. Wait, she was actually climbing into his bed. His mind began to spiral. He thought back to that dark silhouette from his earlier nightmare. Was it even a dream? Had she been sleeping beside him this entire time? Even with his eyes squeezed shut, he could feel her heat. She moves with practiced ease as she lies down right beside him, resting there. For a silent moment before suddenly sitting back up, he feels his wrist grabbed by a slender, cool hand, a grip far more delicate than his own, and then something is wrapped around both of their wrists, binding them tightly together. Moment later, seemingly satisfied, Lyra holds his bound hand and lies down beside him. She whispers a sweet good night, promising they will be together forever. Lying beside her, he is violently jolted wide awake by the bizarre sequence of events. Imagine the sheer panic of this moment, the second she binds him He suffers a visceral, terrifying flashback to his past life. His body completely freezes. He is paralyzed with absolute dread. Slowly, painfully, he opens his eyes in. Pitch black, he can hear the steady, rhythmic breathing of the girl right next to him, but he does not dare move. This feels exactly like a horror movie if he turns and locks eyes with Lyra in the dark. Those massive, staring eyes might actually trigger a fatal heart attack right there. So he just lies there, stiff as a board, staring up at the pitch black ceiling. He replays the entire sequence of her sneaking into his room. It was all far too practiced. There is absolutely no way this is her first time doing this. Just how many times has she crawled into his bed before now? He cannot let his mind wander there. Thinking about it too much is terrifying. Finally, when the tight grip on his hand relaxes just a tiny bit, he slowly, mechanically turns his head to look at the girl beside him. What meets his gaze is a sleeping face that looks like a pure angel. Bizarrely, the heavy dread gripping his chest begins to slip away. He sighs silently. The Lyra from just a few moments ago was terrifying. When he died in his past life, the physical pain was brief, but the psychological horror of that night left a permanent scar. He knows the sweet Lyra of this timeline is not the exact same monster. She is gentle, incredibly sensible, and always does what she is told. Aside from her striking looks, she seems like a totally normal girl. Yet her actions tonight spark a deep, unsettling identity crisis inside him. He cannot distinguish between the sweet sister he has raised so carefully and the obsessive girl who tied him to a dirty bed in a past life. The conflict swirling in his eyes is an absolute, complicated mess. Suddenly, Lyra mumbles softly in her sleep. The brother instantly squeezes his eyes shut until he figures this out. Confronting her is not an option. If their mother walked in and witnessed this scene, the consequences would be ruinous. Lyra would easily get kicked out of the house, and with Vance out of prison, he cannot let his sister face the streets alone. He needs to plan. That night, the boy who normally sleeps like the dead suffers from terrible insomnia. He knows exactly when Lyra slips away, right before dawn, whispering a soft good morning to her brother before tiptoeing out. She did nothing else the entire night, just slept peacefully and sweetly right beside him. Once she leaves the room, he finally opens his eyes. They are entirely bloodshot. He sighs heavily. What is he supposed to do? Just let it play out like before. Honestly, he does not even know her. Kalin couldn't stop thinking about his past life. He was kidnapped on the day of their blind date. For the next 2 days, they were both trapped in that bed together. He actually woke up in the middle of it and saw Lyra sitting quietly on the edge of the mattress, holding a fruit knife and slowly tracing it over her own wrists. Her face was freezing cold and dripping with absolute disgust. That hatred was directed entirely at herself. Back then, Kalin was sweating bullets, completely terrified that she would turn the knife on him. Anyone would be terrified, but in the end, Lyra used the blade on herself. Kalin muttered silently in the dark, wondering where things went wrong. Why was the Lyra of this new life still so insanely, abnormally possessive? After reincarnating, Kalin had actually researched her bizarre behavior from his past life. It matched up perfectly with what the internet calls a yandere. Later, he tried to analyze it himself. He figured her obsession was heavily influenced by her toxic childhood family. But in this life, Lyra grew up in his house, in a healthy, loving environment. So where exactly did the wires get crossed? Kalin collapsed back onto his mattress, staring blankly at the ceiling. Could it be genetics? But Lyra was nothing like her biological father, Vance. He lay there until his mom called him to wake up and Lyra knocked on his door. He dragged himself up, changed into his uniform, and sluggishly stumbled out. Lyra acted completely normal. Kalin couldn't detect a single flaw in her mask. If he wasn't 100% sure he was wide awake last night, he would have convinced himself it was just another bad dream. Speaking of dreams, he felt incredibly awkward, knowing she had been sneaking into his bed every single night. That meant his previous physical reactions, well, she knew absolutely everything. Talk about a complete nightmare scenario. He couldn't let himself think about that. In the morning, his mom drove them to school, glancing at him nodding off in the passenger seat, asking what he was doing last night. Kalin replied with zero energy, muttering what else could he be doing but sleeping. His eyes stayed shut. Sitting in the back seat, Lyra couldn't help but steal several glances at him. She had definitely noticed his extreme exhaustion this morning, even though last night he really was just sleeping. Feeling worried, Lyra reached out, wanting to press her hand against his forehead. It was a completely natural, caring gesture, but Kalin suddenly snapped his eyes. Open and quickly dodged her hand. Lyra froze, staring blankly at her. Empty hand hovering in the air, her eyes filled with instant confusion. Helplessness and a deep, chilling darkness underneath. The second he dodged, he instantly regretted it. Looking at her, he muttered unnaturally that he was fine, just lacking energy because of poor sleep. The moment the words left his mouth, he felt like an idiot, of course. He didn't sleep well. Lyra was literally lying right next to him all night. She already knew that. Honestly, it wasn't his fault since he had spent the whole night overthinking everything. With Lyra's current state, would she kidnap him again and end his life? She literally tied him up last night, and he was genuinely terrified of dying a second time. It felt like painstakingly raising a top-tier game character, only to see it deleted. His save file is corrupting, and he has no idea if he can ever reset again. The reality is far more terrifying, keeping him silent until they get out of the car and walk into class, one behind the other. Thorn leans over to whisper, asking him why the tension is escalating. He glances over at Lyra, who is sitting down with a freezing glare. In a hushed voice, he asks what Thorn really thinks of Lyra. Thorn looks completely blank and utterly confused by the unexpected question. He asks why, pointing out that Lyra is basically flawless to him. She has amazing grades and a perfect attitude, after all. But her brother scoffs, realizing his personal bias had blinded him and kept him from noticing her bizarre behavior for so long. He needs an outside perspective. Thorn shoots him a stressed look. Thorn mutters that since he was asked, he will speak honestly. In a barely audible whisper, Thorn admits she is absolutely terrifying. His eyes even nervously dart over toward her desk. And right on cue, Lyra turns her head to look back at them. Thorn breaks out in cold sweat, but she is completely ignoring him. Instead, she stares at Kalin, who has been acting incredibly strange lately. She plans to confront him today. Her brother quietly presses Thorn further. Thorn waits until Lyra turns back around before finally explaining why. He mentions a time back in elementary school when he shoved him. If she could have gotten away with it, she would have ended him. Thorn is dead serious, even though they were just dumb kids back then. He still vividly remembers the dangerous predator look in her eyes. For a long time after, he felt like he was being hunted. He has no proof, but he blames it on sheer intuition. Her brother stares back with a completely blank, unimpressed face. Still, the warning hits home and triggers some deeply buried memories. Even back then, Lyra was already fundamentally different from other kids. She simply learned how to wear a flawless mask as she grew up. Gripping his textbook, he realizes this second life is another dead end. He is stuck, wondering if this version of Lyra can still be saved. Having raised her this far, he cannot bring himself to abandon her. Besides, he is far too attached to ever let her go anyway. He raised her with his own hands. Abandoning her is not an option. Deep down, he knows he could never leave her side, regardless of the cost. The final bell of the day suddenly jolts him out of his panic. Packing his bag on autopilot, his mind still spins with dark thoughts. Suddenly, Lyra is standing right next to him, speaking softly. She is fully packed, staring at him with an intense, unblinking focus. Her cold stare makes the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. That quiet command to head home sounds like a total, chilling ultimatum. Their walk back is wrapped in a heavy, suffocating silence. Even their friend Brian senses the dark aura and quickly runs ahead. But the second they step into their apartment, everything changes. Kane is greeted by total silence. His parents have faculty meetings and won't be home. Until later, it is just the two of them. Kane drops his bag on the sofa and turns around, ready to clear things up, but Lyra is already standing right in front of him, blocking his path, calling him Kane instead of brother. Is never a good sign. Why are you avoiding me? She asks, voice eerily calm. Her massive doe eyes swirl with a terrifying storm of anxiety and dark possessiveness. Did someone say something? Is there another girl you like? She takes a step closer, backing him up against the sofa. If there is, you must tell me because I won't allow it. Kane looks at the girl in front of him, the flawless, perfectly obedient mask she has worn for years is cracking, revealing her broken, intensely obsessive soul. Underneath, the tension is crazy. His heart hammers against his ribs, echoing past terrors. But looking at her trembling hands, the same ones he held when They were covered in scars. His fear melts, the same hands he bandaged when she gripped. Those thumbtacks, she isn't a monster, she is just a girl utterly terrified of losing the only light she has ever known, and he was the idiot who had been tiptoeing around her like she was a ticking time bomb, time to rip the Band-Aid off. There is no other girl, Lyra, he says, his voice steady. I've been avoiding you because I didn't know how to look at you after last night. Lyra freezes, the color instantly drains from her face, leaving her deathly pale. I wasn't asleep, he continues, holding her gaze, when you came into my room, when you tied my wrists to yours. The silence in the living room was deafening. He watches as the realization hits her. The sheer panic in her eyes is heartbreaking. Her breathing hitches, and she instinctively takes a step back, her hands flying to her chest. You knew, she whispers, her voice cracking, tears welling up in her eyes, spilling over instantly. You're going to throw me away now, aren't you? You think I'm a psycho. You think I'm a freak. She turns, looking frantically toward the front door, as if preparing to run before he can kick her out. I'm sorry, Kane. I just wanted to make sure you wouldn't leave. I'm sorry. Before she can bolt, Kane reaches out and grabs her wrist. He pulls her forward, wrapping his arms tightly around her trembling shoulders, burying her face into his chest. Who said anything about throwing you away? He mutters into her hair. Lyra stiffens in his arms, completely paralyzed. I told you years ago, Lyra, we are never throwing you away. I am never throwing you away. He sighs, resting his chin on top of her head. But you must stop sneaking into my room like a horror movie villain. If you want to hold my hand, just ask. You don't need to tie me to a bed, for heaven's sake. You're not afraid of me, she sobs, clutching the fabric of his shirt like a lifeline. I was terrified, Kane admits honestly, but then I realized something. You had me completely at your mercy, and all you did was hold my hand and wish me a good night. He pulls back slightly, forcing her to look at him. Her tear-streaked face is a mess, but she is still the most beautiful girl he has ever seen. I know you're broken in places that I can't completely fix, Lyra, but I also know you'd never hurt me, so drop. Kalin tells Lyra she can stop playing the perfect sister act. No more pretending. She stares at him with wide eyes, letting his words sink in. The heavy, suffocating darkness clinging to her suddenly shatters, replaced by something else. Filled with blinding devotion, she reaches up, gently cupping his face. Her thumbs softly wipe away the tears that had smeared onto his cheeks. She whispers his name, her voice dropping low as the childlike pretense fades. She sounds terrifyingly similar to the dangerous woman from his past life. But this time she is warmer, reminding him that he promised to accept her. She warns him he can never take it back, making Kalin groan in defeat. With a headache coming on, he knows he is officially signing his life over. He just wants no more ties. Lyra smiles a beautiful, slightly unhinged smile. The deal is made. Fast forward 10 years. Kalin survives high school and college. He manages it without getting murdered, kidnapped, or chained to a radiator. His strategy of aggressively loving the Yandere until she feels secure actually works. Who would have thought? Meanwhile, Vance drinks himself to death after getting out of prison. They do not attend his funeral. Years later, Selena sends a college graduation text. Lyra promptly deletes the text without even letting Kalin read it. The couple moves out of his parents' house and into a cozy apartment. It is right near the animation studio, where Kalin works as lead designer. On his day off, Kalin decides to do some deep cleaning around the place. While dusting the top shelf of Lyra's closet, he knocks over a box. A thick, leather-bound notebook tumbles out and hits the floor with a heavy thud. Kalin picks it up. The cover reads Aquarium Diary. Curiosity always wins out. He flips the book open. Unbelievable, it is a densely packed stalker log, filled with every tiny detail about him. There is an entry for March 12th, the day they first held hands. She wrote that his palm was sweaty but warm. Next entry, August 9th. He smiled at a barista, and Lyra successfully memorized the woman's face. If he smiles again, Lyra plans to talk to the manager. Then, November 4th. The exact date of his first nocturnal awakening. She knew he thought she slept. She watched him wash his pants in a panic, calling it cute. Kalin breaks a sweat. Yep, she is not cured. She has just gotten insanely good at hiding her crazy. As he reads this, feeling his soul leave his body, soft arms wrap around him. They stealthily hold him from behind as a familiar, sweet scent washes over him. Lyra whispers directly into his ear with a dangerous, silken tone. She points out that his clothes smell like men's cologne today. Kalin freezes in place, the diary still clutched tightly in his hands. Slowly turning his head, he sees Lyra, now a stunning 22-year-old woman. She rests her chin on his shoulder, her eyes flicking from the diary to his face. Her smile is sweet, but her eyes are dead as she demands an explanation. She asks softly why her fiancé smells like another man. Kalin sighs exhaustedly. He explains that Declan hugged him in the elevator, calling her an absolute psycho. In a deadpan tone, Kalin explains Declan just got engaged to Bryony and was crying. Kalin had to physically peel the guy off his jacket. Lyra blinks, surprised. Instantly, the murderous aura in the room vanishes, replaced by a soft, genuine smile. He laughs, wishing them congratulations. Then, Lyra reaches out and plucks the aquarium. Diary straight from his hands, casually tossing it onto the bed, noting he found her little. Hobby stamps are a hobby, Lyra, he grumbles. This thing is a straight-up manifesto. He turns around to fully face her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Pulling her flush against him, she's lucky he's already immune to her crazy. You love my crazy, she hums, resting her hands on his chest. Besides, she doesn't need to update it as much anymore, proudly boasting that she already has him right where she wants him. She glances down at the diamond ring sparkling on her left ring finger. The one Kane had put there 2 months ago. He looks down at the woman who once ended his life but who is now the center of his current one. Sure, she still has her moments where she glares daggers at female coworkers, and she definitely still tracks his phone's location, yet she is his and he is unconditionally hers. Yeah, he mutters, leaning down to kiss her forehead. Just remember the ground rules, no ropes, chains, or knives. Lyra smiles, leaning up to capture his lips with hers, promising Kane she will behave, whispering against his mouth. As long as you never look away from me. Kane closes his eyes, pulling her closer. Honestly, resetting his life wasn't that bad after